So you say most people believe there is something dramatically wrong in this country. They're not sure what it is.
Got your labor next your soul, interest slave in endless hole. It's so deep you'll never leave, a text on key with no reprieve. Interest banking, future sold, paper money, fuck the gold. Print more money, there's no end, new interest rates thanks to the Fed. Inflation's up, we can't afford to import, source an endless hoard. Funding all this endless war, these the whores I must ignore. Feeling good, yeah that's my price. The system lets me have my vice. Bread and circus feels nice, feeling bad, take this advice. Just take this pill, watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill, watch some porn, drain your vril. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. Never thought that this would happen, should've prepped instead of fapping. Tires screeching, people scream, living nightmare, not a dream. There goes all my dopamine, wiping off my jerk off cream. I'm flabby, weak and unprepared to own a gun, I'm really scared. Water filters, batteries, cans of food and MREs. I really should've bought that shit before the social fabric ripped. Atomized, I'm all alone, no internet, can't scroll my phone. The lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. Came on, I can't believe, breathe a sigh of great relief. Boy, I love modernity, endless goon sesh never leave. If you're sad, just take this pill. Watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill. Watch some porn, join your grill. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out.
And we are live once again from a Wetworks facility hidden behind a front hotel operating in Beijing. We are the Library of Mass Destruction. I am your host, Capitalisimo, as per usual, and with me is Christopher Sandbatch. Sir, how are you doing today?
We never get the locations, we never get our locations synced up. So my message tonight was 61 degrees and mostly clear in Toledo, Ohio.
Well, we are maybe you're just sending out, some false signals. Maybe my statement was the noise and yours was the signal. Who knows?
Yeah. We'll never know. I think it's also important to point out that this is the first postmodern edition of Library of Mass Destruction. With the publication of Thomas Pynchon's final novel, we can finally put the 20th century behind us and move on.
I think he's got like 6 of them in the can, just waiting to get released.
No, yeah, the bootleg series.
He's been writing werewolf porn for the past 8 years.
Yeah,
and
wouldn't that be awesome if he has been? But always think that's what Pynchon has always struck me as, the kind of writer who writes, which is very different from the kind of writer that most writers these days, what they do is they tweet and live well beyond their means. But Pynchon seems to me to be the rare type of writer who actually writes, and I think you could possibly write. Yeah, we're going to be getting we're going to be getting Pynchon novels for decades. The same. We're still getting Johnny Cash releases. We're still getting Tupac releases. We're going to be getting Pynchon releases forever. I think you're actually probably right.
Yep, that's right. And they won't even be AI. He just has a crazy back catalog.
Yeah.
For every novel he's published, he's written 25.
You know, that'd be, I like to see with respect to poetry, it's probably about where I'm at. I think I probably write 20 for every one that gets published. So,
well, it is a lot faster theoretically to write a poem.
Theoretically,
I don't want to denigrate the poets out there. Say that it's easy, but
you know, I had a rare hinge match recently with a woman who, you know, she. Yeah, very interesting. She talked about how much she loved hanging out with me and everything like that. And she's like, we should hang out later. And so I hang out at the bar or whatever. And then I go back to the coffee shop that I was working in because I got tired of waiting on her. And right across the street from that coffee shop is a bar. And I get there and I walk and see her. She's coming out with another dude. And I'm like, well, I hate women forever again. But she was a creative writing major of some sort. And she also told me, I think prose is in and poetry is out. And my response to that was, well, you've been saying that for 500 years.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, poetry is the rarefied form, but it certainly doesn't sell as much. You know?
No, it doesn't. Well, it's actually, I think it probably, we may be approaching parody with respect to, I would be willing to bet that Matthew McConaughey's book of poetry that just came out sold at rough parody is selling at rough parody to Pynchon's novel, actually. And that's, yeah, but now I may be like thumbing the scale one way or the other here because it's Matthew McConaughey and, you know, and Thomas Pynchon. It may not like any other guy.
You like McConaughey more than you like Pynchon.
I do like McConaughey more than I like Pynchon, but I'm just saying that if a person who is known as a poet other than as like Matthew McConaughey wrote a book of poetry, it probably would not sell as well as Thomas Pynchon.
Honestly, I got to tell you something. McConaughey, he's just American Russell Brand.
That's an interesting take. I thought you were going to say he's just American Russell blank for a minute, and I was going to have to explode. I was going to have to explode my computer and go into hiding.
He's of course more talented than Russell Brand. He's of course more talented than Russell Brand because he is an American. Yeah. But he is just American Russell Brand. He's a little bit of a you know fence sitting phony baloney mystic.
He's a bit of the Hitler in a lot of ways. I think that's true. However, I will say his book is good. It's like as far as like that sort of writing, as far as like celebrities writing goes, it's pretty. You know, I've never read any Ruby Cat. We've converted the Library of Mass Destruction into a gossip hour about recent literature is what we've done. We're actually not going to talk about anything else tonight.
Yeah, it's just from now on. That's all it is. We're gonna do. Hold on. We're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna. All right, here we go. The women in my life raised me to new heights. Back when I didn't have the confidence to look myself in the eye, they saw the best version of me. They helped me see her too. Female Friendships by Rupi Kaur. She's actually the best. I think she might be the best-selling contemporary poet.
That's fucking dog shit.
Yes,
like,
that's
actual dog shit.
The famously dog shit Rupi Kaur. That's right. Yes. My
favorite contemporary poet is Tom Will, and I think everybody knows that. And there's nothing in any of his books that's not. That's I don't know what that is. I want to go jump off a cliff now.
Happy Columbus Day to you too, Red Hiney Monkey in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the day. This is the day that Italian Americans, the not hyphenated, merely a new ethnogenesis that occurred on these fair shores among the Ellis Islanders. Italian Americans get to be thanked for everything we've done to make America America.
You know, of the Ellis Islanders, the Italians are by far my favorite because like there is no corresponding holiday for German Americans, for Polish Americans, or anything like that. The Italian Americans,
if you are in the American Midwest, you do get Casimir Pulaski Day, which is the one for the Polacks.
I remember,
which I'm pretty sure only occurred because some Chicago mayor needed to win an election.
Right, and then Sufjan Stevens needed something to name a song, but the thing, the Italian Americans, they really got behind it, and I'll tell you what, the esoteric, because you know America was originally supposed to be called like Columbia or something like we were thinking about calling the country Columbia or something like that, and of course we have the District of Columbia, but the Christopher Columbus story is remarkably not big in early 19th century America. If you remember, like George Washington.
Oh no, it was literally like Columbus Day is literally for Italian Americans.
Yeah,
it was to bring them into the fold, and
it's cool, but they really got behind it, and like so at this point, I'm all about it. So Italian Americans are my favorite of the Ellis Islanders subbreeds. I love them.
Yeah. I mean, the Irish get St. Paddy's Day. The Italians get Columbus Day. You're right. The Germans don't really have one. You can't really count Oktoberfest. Nobody gets Oktoberfest off of work.
Yeah.
Right. So
you know, like the what was the other one? The St. Patrick's Day. You know, that one's like, I don't know if that one counts. First of all, because
it counts.
Because it's like a day that's been sort of like it's been a feast day in the Catholic Church for like 1700 years. We didn't invent that one.
Well, sure, but the celebration of St. Patrick's Day in the American way is
mean in the way that everyone in Ireland fucking hates the diaspora for?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you think about Italian Americans, right? Italian Americans are the most authentic Italians, right? Because they love Italian authenticity. They're more authentic than people who live in Italy and speak Italian.
Yeah, that's true. There's
Italian Americans own Italy. Italy.
Yeah, there's an Italian that comes.
They've never been there.
Yeah, they've never been there.
They own it.
There's an Italian that comes into there's a couple of Italians that come into my cafe, and they're all like they're expat professionals. And they're just grumpy dudes that chain smoke cigarettes. They do drink a lot of espresso, which is like very like cool in Italian, but they're also Northern Italian, and most of the Italians in the United States came from Sicily or Southern Italy. I think that's why I like them so much more. I am like the rare person on this side of Twitter that is like a hard stand for Southern Italy, which I think.
Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me, a lowly North African.
Yeah, I love Sicilians. Sicilians to me are the best.
The thing is, it's like if all of the Germans in America came from Bavaria instead of Prussia, right?
Yeah,
that's the effect, because all the Italians in America came from like Naples and Sicily, right?
Do you know how the German immigration thing works? I mean, we're like way off course right now, but we may as well go there. The way the German immigration thing works is they came in two major waves. The first one was around 1848, and that was around the 1848 revolutions and the Prussian consolidation. But after that, there was a lull in German immigration until the 1890s, and so like the 1890s wave of German immigrations, they tended to come from not Bavaria, but they came from because there were still what it makes up Germany today. It used to be 6 independent kingdoms. It was a bunch of independents. That's simplifying it. It's actually very complicated, but the later ones were mostly from the areas that we would call the Rhineland and Baden. And so they were German Catholics, and what they were doing was fleeing the Prussian consolidation of Lower Germany. And so I tend to like that wave. Which
is why you have places like Rhineland, Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of them came to Louisiana. Lots of them came to Louisiana because of the Catholicism. And so like out in like Cajun country, you'll have like German Cove.
Oh yeah, that's another holiday, Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is for the mulattoes. That's
Mardi Gras, fascinatingly, is actually an English holiday. That's that's super esoteric. But
Mardi Gras is a New Orleans holiday. It was practiced
holiday.
in other places to prepare the way for New Orleans.
There may be some truth to that, but the thing. Okay, so there are really three main Mardi Gras celebrations in the United States. One's in Mobile, one's out in Cajun country, and the other one, the big one, of course, is in New Orleans. But what people don't know about the one in New Orleans is that it's not Catholic at all. It begins on Twelfth Night, which is, of course, famously the name of a Shakespeare play. And the Mardi Gras cruise that put on the KREWES that put on those were all WASP organizations. And so like it's Mardi Gras, but it's been like converted into an Anglo-American holiday. The New Orleans version of it has. Well, really now it's like the big game, ESPN tier holiday, TikTok holiday, but like during its heyday, it was an Anglo-American holiday. This is why, like, when we
need more regional holidays. We need
nothing but regional holidays, is what I think. Like, you know,
Thanksgiving and Halloween are the ones that really bind the country together. I mean, Christmas, Easter, obviously, but you know, we do those ones, and then everyone has like a different regional holiday. People would literally move to wherever has a legit holiday that occurs in, like, I don't know, that sort of that doldrums, right? Like right in like the beginning of September, there needs to be a legit holiday, right?
Yeah, I love
not Memorial Day or Labor Day or whichever one it is, like an actual holiday.
The only area, I mean, San Francisco kind of does this with whatever gay shit they're up to, but the only place in America that I can think of that really does this is like Charleston and the Low Country between there and like Savannah. They will have like they let people off work for things like St. George's Day and Michaelmas and who is the saint for Wales? It's the Daffodil Society, but I can't remember the patron saint. I'm like a quarter Welsh, and I'm a member of this organization, and I can't.
I have never met a whale.
Well, I've never met a whale. Yeah, John D is Welsh.
Oh yeah. I recall now.
Anyway, back to LMD stuff. Today we're talking about
Hey, you know what? The thing is, our cold open is usually about 15 minutes, and so like we're right on time.
Yeah, we're actually right on it, aren't we?
That's right. So, we somehow blew through the Gulf of Tonkin incident in the last episode.
I'm starting to believe Eric actually didn't have much to say about the Gulf of Tonkin.
He was just like, it's obviously bullshit, and I needed a third thing. Right.
Yeah, it's like there was like I had to have a third one in here. But actually what I'm suspecting is that the first two he was including more or less as build up to this one, which is like this is because we're talking about Watergate tonight, and when parapolitics, of course, is just the left-wing version of schizo posting, and like the Watergate incident is to them like the wooden doors fiasco is for like the right-wing posters. This is like the king mommy of all the conspiracies.
The left-wing rehabilitation of Nixon as a victim is amazing. So I made the prediction last time, and I will do it again, and the title of this episode is False Flag Inception. The case that he's going to make, I think, is that the dual state, in his parlance, wanted to remove Nixon, and so in order to do so, they put him in an unwinnable situation. They carried out the Watergate break-in, deliberately got caught, leaked information, let him know so that he covered it up, and then they got him. They had naval intelligence leak all sorts of information into the press. In fact, naval intelligence was the press at the time, because that's who Frost was. and so people acting on not on behalf of the RNC ended up burglarizing the DNC, and that was the false flag, right? The idea that these were people working for Nixon. So they triple cross. It's a triple cross, really, because they gave him. It's actually, technically speaking, this would be more like grifting, right? Because you give someone the opportunity to do something dishonest, and then if they do that, then they lose, right? So Nixon got snookered here, and I think that's going to be the statement. But we'll see. We shall see.
Yeah, and I suspect we're not going to get all the way through this one because it seems lengthy.
We're like 60% of the way through the book, so there's plenty left. All right. False Flag 3, Nixon Watergate. Conspiratorial play is a universal of power politics. And where there is no limit to power, there is no limit to conspiracy. I can't conceive of what that caper was all about. I really can't conceive it. Richard Helms. Just wow. Clearly from the Nixon tapes, right?
It's got to be, yeah. Well, no, I don't know. He's probably being interviewed.
That vocal
afterwards.
cadence. Yeah.
I don't know what that was all about. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
You're on the Nixon tapes explaining exactly what you thought it was all about. Like,
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about. There was a lot of Quaaludes floating around the late administration at the time.
Yeah. That compendium of parapolitical occurrences, conventionally known as the Watergate scandal, is complete simulacrum, Baudrillard mentioned via reference. The third-rate burglary attempt was actually a fiction. That is a parapolitical comedy of errors, which, just like JFK Dallas and LBJ Tonkin, signifies precisely nothing, revealing itself as a perfect spectacle. Although generally understood in the popular consciousness as an autonomous event, I will show that Watergate, or following clandestine parlance once again, Nixon Watergate, is in fact forms part of a parapolitical continuum, incorporating a series of doubled events governed by the covert application of spectacular power. Just as Johnson effectively swapped Vietnam for Cuba. So, crap.
What is 4chan? Is that the other tab you had?
I just had the tab.
Is that your homepage?
Yeah. I have a short link bar. I actually closed the book, so I need to go back to it like an idiot.
Millennial moment.
No kidding.
Zoomers in the audience.
Hey, you know what?
Don't even know how to use
that I
bar.
use 4chan. Everyone knows that I used 4chan. It's not like I showed you horse porn like Vaush. Let me see. Share
did
screen.
He do that? It's awful.
What?
It's terrible. Did he do that?
Oh yeah, no, he did that.
What the fuck? How do people survive that?
I mean, everyone in his audience is also a pervert, so
that's true. True.
Present. There we go.
When I was hanging out with the Hinge woman, I had to re-dip myself into the world of like the sort of left-wing sort of fringe for a couple of days, and I came back wanting to kill everyone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they're worse
woman?
They're worse. The one that like she was a dime square bitch is what she was. There is a contingent of like dime square expats that have moved into New Orleans and but they all like hang out in a part of town that I don't go to anymore. And I had to go like re-immerse myself in that world for a few days. And I came away again wanting to do mass violence. I wanted to do me a spectacle.
Sex Freakman, I interpret how do people survive that in that if you show that to someone, it instantly kills them. referencing horse pornography, of course.
But like, what? I don't know what I would do if horse pornography like just suddenly flashed in front of me.
We could find out right now.
We can find out.
Last episode of LMD. All right. Just as Johnson effectively swapped Vietnam for Cuba, so did Nixon, a covert Yankee masquerading as a cowboy, swap Vietnam for détente too, the second and vastly more successful exercise in triangulated multilateralism first attempted by JFK and which provoked an analogous clandestine response.
A covert Yankee masquerading as a cowboy. That's a bomb drop, Eric.
I don't feel like Nixon was masquerading as a cowboy.
I don't think he was either. Like, he seems like, if anything, he seems like it might have gone the other
cowboy,
way.
I don't think cowboy just means right wing.
No, what it means, I think because they tend to be, because Nixon was all tied up with, and I'm sure we're probably going to get into this, the Orange County GOP, which is like, Orange County, California GOP, which is like, that's like Cowboys, that is Cowboy Central, but and Nixon did not like them very much, but like, I think he's stretching Oglesby a little bit there, but
yeah, it kind of just doesn't fit, right?
Yeah, right.
Let's see. It is not widely known that the grandest historical ambition of the Nixon administration was the cessation of Civil War II and the reunification of the warring elites through an all-inclusive neo-cowboy realignment of the national political culture.
That makes more sense.
The New Age majority.
Yeah, this makes more sense.
As history would have it, however, that parapolitical honor was to be reserved for Ronald Reagan. It was on the Gipper's watch and not Tricky Dick's that the U.S. was launched upon its unalterable trajectory towards the suicidal state of pure war.
All right.
Let's see. See Wilson, speed, pure war, power crime generally. So this is his one of his what do you call it? One of his terms. But upon ascending the presidency in 1969, Nixon's more immediate and indispensable task was the final resolution of the dilemma of Vietnam. 1968, the year of the Tet Offensive, Johnson's decision to not seek re-election, and the riots of the Chicago Convention marked the moment of the de facto U.S. decision to withdraw from Indochina. Driven by the war-induced systemic crisis within the capitalist world economy, sometimes the like,
he's building quite a scaffold of ifs here.
Sometimes the commie gobbledygook comes out with capitalist world economy.
I was saying, did you know the theoretical origin of capitalist world economy? This is actually from of course, Jewish theorist called Immanuel Wallerstein, who's actually really close to my research, and this would be world systems analysis is what he's referring. When you hear me talk about rival modernities, and I'm actually really, there's not a lot there, because there are some right wingers that did and have been doing some adjacent stuff, like Reinhard Koselleck, the guy that I'm always telling people to read. And Schmidt also is a little bit adjacent here, but the idea of this is the idea of the sort of like, I mean, the contemporary right has adopted quite a bit of this framework, which is Cal Kruzis and I have serious issues with this. We're actually sort of pushing back against it a little bit. But the idea here is that, this marks the moment when the entire world economy is unified under Marx's world capitalist system, and all that is solid melts into air, and so on and so forth, and all that good stuff. But
we reach the eschaton.
Yeah. This is the end of history. Exactly, it's what it is. It's the end of history. But I mean, I was like in 1960, there are a lot of weird claims here. 1968, the year of the Tet Offensive, Johnson's decision marks the moment of.
Do you have a single fact to back that up?
Yeah, marks the moment of the de facto U.S. decision to withdraw from Indochina. Never mind the fact that we continued escalating for another few years. We're 6 years from withdrawing from Indochina at this point. The Vietnam War is about halfway over. Okay,
I keep trying to pull out, and they keep pulling me back in.
Yeah. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. But then we also have this induced systemic crisis for the capitalist world economy. Okay, specifically the U.S.-based gold outflow crisis. This is some creature of Jekyll. This is some, like, none dare call it conspiracy theory retardation. You want to know the truth, and like against this idea of the capitalist world economy, I would submit to you as an oppositional thesis the fact that half of the world in 1968 was under the de jure and de facto hegemony of the worker state. The 1970s have not even started yet. We're not even doing the wars against the communists in Latin America. We're not even doing the Iran, Arab socialism
relationship between the various communist countries had not completely disintegrated by that point either.
Right. Eric Wilson is calling the game really early here.
Yeah. Yep. And from the first touchdown, the game was set. Yeah. Specifically, the U.S.-based gold outflow crisis and the structural entrenchment of the global inflationary spiral. You know how you solve that? You make the money made up. You just make it made up.
You and I are in agreement here, but this is some like serious white knuckle. This is what actually, I'm sort of famous for saying
this is very close to someone has fractional reserve banking explained to them the first time and gets a migraine from the excess blood pressure in their brain.
That's what I mean. It's a none dare call it conspiracy shit, but like. This is whenever I talk about how like libertarianism is actually a kind of leftism. This is what the parapolitical left has the same weird bullshit about the global inflationary spiral. And because I like to point out where Nick Land's priors come from, this is where he gets it from.
Well, but Nick Land also regularly Nick Land says that liberalism is liberalism is an ethnicity, and of course, as an Anglo, he can be not else. Yeah. So, which is very fair, right? Yeah, fish are wet if they're alive, right? Huh. The larger economic system of the Western world as a whole was suffering from another great malaise, which in some way or another was connected to the Vietnam War. Some way or another, who could I can't put it together. The American War in Southeast Asia and the mounting inflation that ensued undermined the international system built up since 1947, and in particular, weakened the position of the United States, the linchpin of the system.
No, this is true.
So that after 1967, the rules and institutional bases of the old structure began to disintegrate, which of course you agree with.
I mean, I agree with but of course, what I refer
you agree with the conclusion, maybe not the causes.
This is to me this is what I call the imposition, the end of the fifth part, the end of the New Deal state. I mean, this is pretty across the academy. This is pretty well established. Like the historical academy will pretty well agree that this moment, it'll be called different things. They'll call it growth liberalism. They'll call it the end of growth liberalism. The end of the New Deal state.
Baroque liberalism.
Growth. Well, yeah, that works too. I like that a little more, actually, now that I think about it. But this is interesting. And this is where I think they miss a bit of their own shit, because this is what I call the imposition of like eternal MK Ultra as political theology. Is what's beginning here, and this is kind of my version.
I don't really I don't think that MK Ultra had fully enmeshed itself yet at this point.
No, but I think it has. The 70s, I think, are a kind of Chateaujet or transition zone, and then moving it, like especially with the second oil crisis, I think is the formal imposition of it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Where are we? The political challenge was to devise a way of withdrawing from Vietnam in such a manner that the U.S.-centric nature of global rules and institutional bases could be maintained. In order to accomplish this, given the pronounced shift towards the cowboy faction under Johnson, it was necessary for Nixon to successfully play a complex game of cat and also cat, dual representations on two different levels simultaneously. First, President Nixon's impeccable cowboy credentials. Only Nixon could go to China. Signified that's ridiculous. There are like over 1 billion people there, obviously. Signified primarily by his open animosity against the Yankee Eastern establishment, was deployed as the camouflage for a covert quasi-Yankee agenda of withdrawal from the Pacific and a relative shift backwards toward Atlanticism. It is now I'm really digging this because we are just seeing the other side of none dare call it conspiracy.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this is pretty schizo.
Yeah, well, but I mean, we're seeing the same exact events taken apart using different, and you had mentioned the Yankee Cowboy War when we were reading, none dare call it.
And I will admit the weakness of the Yankee Cowboy War is what do you do with Nixon? Okay, so this guy that opens China, this guy that actually goes to China and opens China up to creates the contemporary situation between the United States and China, that he's operating under a covert Atlanticist agenda. It's hard to read that, but no, we'll see. Let's see what he's got.
We got a super chat from Alex Henry for $5. So the South Carolina Georgia Low Country is the most Anglican part of the country. Explains how the Diocese of South Carolina was able to leave the Episcopal Church and keep the churches.
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, that was actually a big court case, and it was a big. Well, there was because when they did the Episcopal, the new Anglican Diocese of South Carolina was sued by the TEC, and they had the money to continue fund the lawsuit. Usually, when dioceses leave the TEC, they don't have enough money to even sustain the lawfare from TEC to retain control of the churches. South Carolina is the place where they did. And so that's why when you go to Charleston, like St. James and all of the really nice churches are, it's like in most places, the continuing Anglican movement and the fractured Anglican movements have they're the ones that are in the prefab aluminum churches on the edge of town. It's in South Carolina in the Low Country where they actually got to keep the historic properties.
The liberal Catholic Church, there's a reason it runs out of a single family ranch style home in Montana,
right? Yeah,
rather than the Holy See. Anyway, let's see here. Eastern establishment, quasi Yankee agenda withdrawal. Secondly, Nixon deployed as his surrogate double, his decidedly Yankee national security advisor Henry Kissinger, to implement Détente 1 while covertly hidden behind the cutout of the official Secretary of State William Rogers. Both Nixon and Kissinger saw the government bureaucrats as roadblocks to be circumvented. To Nixon, Congress was under the thumbs of the Democrats. The Department of State and the Central Intelligence Agency were havens for the Eastern establishment liberals who hated him, and the military, Joint Chiefs of Staff, was full of doctrinaire, inflexible anti-communists. To circumvent them all, Nixon determined to use an agency first established in 1947 that had lain dormant in the Kennedy and Johnson years, but was under the complete control of the White House, the National Security Council. For a man who loved secrecy, it was perfect. While the statutory members of the NSC were officers of the cabinet, the National Security Advisor and his staff were presidential appointees who did not have to be confirmed by Congress. The NSC was chartered as a clearinghouse for information from state, the Pentagon, and the intelligence community flowing to the White House, and it could take action quickly, unless those other organizations were withholding information.
So when we're talking about Congress being under the Democrats, this is actually sort of true, and it's not even really close. So Nixon becomes president in 1968, but In the 90th Congress, there are 240. This is 67 to 69. There are 247 Democrats in the House of Representatives versus 187. Like if you look at versus today, where there's like a 20, it's less than a 10-seat difference.
Yeah.
This is a very clear Democrat majority, and it remains that way all the way through Nixon's administration. So it's it
remains that way until Reagan.
So there's 247 Democrats in the 90th Congress, 243 in the 91st, 255 in the 92nd, and then 73, 75 in the 93rd Congress. It's back down to 240.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if Nixon wins in a fucking landslide.
Yeah, but
Congress just doesn't change.
And the Senate was just as bad. So there's 64 Democrat senators in 90. 57 and 91, 54 and 92 and 56. Actually, the 92nd Congress was pretty close, but we're not really doing a whole lot. And there's two independents, and they both tend. So there's really 56. So yeah.
Nixon's much touted secret plan for ending, i.e., winning the war in Vietnam, was nothing more than extraordinarily Byzantine. Was an extraordinarily Byzantine exit strategy governed by the parallel considerations of the gold flow crisis and the necessity of securing détente with both the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China, the two primary sponsors of North Vietnam. Pivotal to the secret plan was the successful negotiation of a series of triangulated sets of accords. The comparative loss of Vietnam should not constitute an absolute loss within the binary logic, zero-sum game of the Cold War if détente 2 could be realized. Simultaneously, the presentation of détente as a multilateralist fait accompli would domestically undercut both the military and ideological opposition to the exit strategy. The carefully orchestrated exit, of course, would require the following. One, a carefully phased withdrawal from Vietnam, accompanied by a frenzied intensification of the war effort, the bombing of Hanoi, and the infliction of the maximum degree of destruction upon the physical infrastructure of Vietnam, reaching its apogee in the secret bombing of both Laos and Cambodia. Thanks, Kissinger. Footnote, this constitutes another, if generally overlooked, form of linkage between Vietnam and Cuba. The bombing campaign against Hanoi and the open-ended trade embargo against Havana were both intended to inflict so much economic and physical hardship as to render their respective systems of Marxist-Leninism unviable as models for regional development. I think embargoes really don't fucking work. Like they're short.
Embargoes work if you do them the old-fashioned way, where you literally blockade the ports and let nothing in. But we do these like porous sanction versions of them now, and they just don't work at all.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh, you don't get to trade with us. Now you have to trade with China, a place that
exactly.
nobody trades with ever.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
Okay, well, yeah, exactly. Two, the U.S. securing the normalization of relations with China, most importantly for the investment opportunities this represented, a central component of the cowboy Asia First strategy and the Nixon-affiliated China lobby, along with a new era of stabilization with the USSR, consistent with the Atlanticist orientation of the Yankee faction. And three, deploying détente 2 as the foundation for a neo-Yankee foreign policy consensus by making irreversible a post-Vietnam geostrategic shift away from the Asia-Pacific back towards a new North Atlantic European coalition. By the way, the idea of opening China for trade was the biggest self-own ever, or was close to not letting MacArthur conquer it. That was close second.
We made a lot of again, those are Yankee. Those are what we perceive. This is when you perceive the cowboy faction emerges as a reaction against what are perceived as Yankee errors in how in how MacArthur would have been like the first cowboy.
But Truman was a cowboy too.
That's true. But Truman is the president that makes me that I'm the least willing to comment on.
Doesn't really fit. He might actually be the Yankee in cowboy clothing.
Yeah. But I don't know enough. We should actually get Cal Cruces to come sit in with us one night and have him talk about Truman, because Truman is somebody I don't know a lot about. He's hard for me to get a good viz on, and Cal knows a lot about him. But yeah, he's hard to read. But you can read the cowboy faction in large measure as a reaction against what are perceived Yankee failures in the conduct of, especially like the failure to deploy nuclear weapons against the USSR early on, and especially against the way we conducted our business with the foreign, with the way the Korean War was conducted. These are considered failures in the ability to sort of shore up that great American dream of the Asian market.
Should have just let MacArthur do his thing.
Should have literally fried them. Yes, I mean, like I'm one of those people who believes that by 1948 we should have nuked the Soviet Union 4 times. By 1950 we should have nuked North Korea, and we probably should not have been involved in Vietnam. We probably should have just nuked Hanoi.
We wouldn't have needed to.
Right, well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, like it's like I'm a big proponent of the idea that we did not use enough nukes.
Yeah. All right. Neo Yankee. Deploying Détente 2 as the foundation for a new Neo Yankee foreign policy consensus by making irreversible a post-Vietnam geostrategic shift away from the Asia Pacific back towards a new North Atlantic European coalition. However, in order to physically implement the secret plan, the indispensable key to success was the successful creation and operation of a private, secret, or para-government within the White House itself as a means of obviating both the Yankee and cowboy elites. And this, in turn, made necessary a series of unprecedented covert actions by the chief executive himself. So the problem with this versus the problem that he had with his explanation of JFK Dallas is that, all of the things that he said happened, right? And so he's just gonna back read. He could very easily back read a bunch of things because he knows the outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. Which is the opposite problem where, like, we didn't invade Cuba because of the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
So,
I can see his concept of the dual state forming here, though. Like, he's been like sort of inserting it at what I kind of thought was random up until this point, but it is okay. So this is the one that the dual state is going to hinge on. The dual state has to exist.
But now what he's doing now is saying that there are 2 dual states.
Yeah,
so it actually makes it.
Yeah,
it makes it worse. It makes it worse. It like he should have just said deep state or deep states or something. I don't know. Anyway. This grandly parapolitical interpretation of the Nixon administration renders far more intelligible an important but generally underappreciated event of Nixon's tenure: the failure to implement what is known as the Houston Plan. Formulated in 1970 and named after junior White House staffer Tom Charles Houston, the plan was an attempt to amalgamate the domestic counterintelligence programs of all the major intelligence agencies, CIA, DIA, NSA, FBI, to a single elite committee in order to provide Nixon with one informed body of opinion on domestic political intelligence. Also underappreciated is the fact that the Houston Plan for the intelligence services neatly prefigured Nixon's later and equally unrealized plans for the radical centralization of the entirety of the federal bureaucracy through the creation of a super cabinet. Under this plan, 4 traditional cabinet posts, State, Defense, Justice, and Treasury, would be retained, while all of the others and their associated independent agencies would be brought under the direct control of a new set of cabinet officials responsible for 4 policy domains: economic affairs, human resources, national resources, and community development. In effect, this would accomplish 2 goals. streamline all of the dozens of helter-skelter and redundant independent agencies into 4 departments that were manageable, and concentrate them so that all departments of the executive branch of government would be controlled by the White House. Nice try, Nixon. The enactment of the Houston Plan was effectively blocked by the bureaucratic intransigence of Hoover, causing Nixon to feel compelled to create his own private domestic counterintelligence force. The president, in his signature gangsterese, made clear to the White House special counsel Charles W. Colson his desire to create an entire series of clandestine measures to prevent media leaks within the executive branch.
I think this is the first mention of Tex Colson.
Okay, yeah.
Tex Colson, one of the he's the arch cowboy in many ways. Colson is one of the most interesting figures in
more
American
like Jensen.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Yes. And I would also point out that you can see this is the emergence. What we're doing here is we're building the foundation of the resist lib narrative here. So like whenever like we're really building the foundation of both the right wing and the left wing mythology of the Trump administration, because what we just described here, this is what the resist libs are accusing Trump of successfully doing.
Running the executive branch.
Well, like wiring all aspects of the American government into the executive branch and running it
into the golden throne.
Yeah.
All right. I don't give a damn how it's done. I don't really.
That was a good one. That was a good. I don't give a damn how it's done.
I don't give a damn how it's done. Do whatever has to be done to stop these leaks and prevent further unauthorized disclosures. I don't want to be told why there can't be done. The government can't survive. It cannot function if anyone can run out and leak whatever documents he wants to. I want to know who is behind this. I want the most complete investigation that can be conducted. And I don't want excuses. I want results. I want it done, whatever the cost. Although the paragon of cold-blooded careerism, there was little doubt that Hoover acted out of an overriding impulse to preempt a parapolitical catastrophe when thwarting Nixon over the Houston Plan. Yet to Hoover, the act of undermining the Houston Plan was not only rational but necessary. If the extreme domestic counterintelligence options in the final report of the intelligence heads were adopted and implemented, and the wholesale bugging, tapping, and mail opening and break-ins became known, almost as invariably they would be, when attempted by amateurs, the Nixon administration could easily self-destruct. By cutting off liaison, Hoover hoped to distance the FBI and his own reputation from the inevitable Holocaust.
And we're building the scaffolding of the framework that is going to that my boy James Jesus Angleton. We're building the cross he's going to be crucified on here.
Yeah. There is no doubt that there is a direct clandestine connection between the failure of the Houston Plan and Colson's creation of a secret White House counterintelligence unit, euphemistically known as the Plumbers, who proved to be the ultimate instigators of Nixon Watergate. The notorious slush fund at the heart of the Watergate scandal, Follow the Money, was created primarily to finance the off-the-books operations of the paraintelligence system. Although the Houston Plan was officially abandoned, its measures were used in a variety of forms, the most extreme being the creation of the Special Investigative Unit, more familiarly known as the Plumbers, ostensibly established to determine the source of new leaks from inside the administration. The Plumbers graduated to black bag jobs and illegal entries. The linkage between the official scuttling of the Houston Plan and the Plumbers is curiously mixed. Some argued, most notably FBI Deputy Director for Domestic Intelligence William Sullivan, that killing the plan led to the creation of the Plumbers, to mounting similar enterprises, and thus to Watergate. John Ehrlichman said that the inability of the White House to get rid of Hoover necessitated finding other ways of doing things. Houston heatedly denied that his plan offered a model for the Plumbers and other Watergate-related enterprises, yet conceded that if Hoover had gone along with the plan, the administration would have never had to do its own black bag jobs. Fair enough. Because they would have just had they would have had actual agencies to do it, right? Plumbers then were more than a simple extension of Nixon's para-government. They were a semi-autonomous covert entity that was in direct competition with the myriad CIA and FBI domestic counterintelligence operations that were being run simultaneously and very often within these same political spaces.
No,
And all of this during the most acutely sensitive and dangerous parapolitical moment for Nixon, the simultaneous alienation of both the Yankee and Cowboy factions. The Cowboys were alienated by the retreat from full pacificism,
Pacificism.
pacifism,
Yeah.
full pacifism, those pacifists. And the Yankees were alienated through their marginalization within the executive, foreign, and military policy decision-making processes. And both effects ultimately flowed from the systemically clandestine nature of Nixonian governance. Kissinger himself has made this clear. Nixon feared and shrank from imposing overt discipline, but he was determined to achieve his purposes. He thus encouraged procedures unlikely to be recommended in textbooks on public administration that, crab-like, worked privately around existing structures. It was demoralizing for the bureaucracy, which, cut out of the process, reacted by accentuating the independence and self-will that had caused Nixon to bypass it in the first place.
I am sort of amazed that Eric Wilson is making Nixon into a Byronic hero here, and it's like it's interesting. You don't see this too often.
He just has this horrible knot of bureaucrats that he's just attempting to get anything done with using spare parts.
Yeah.
But prospectively even more dangerous, as Hoover might have intuited, was the easily foreseeable reaction of the Cowboys, especially those of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In the words of Admiral Thomas Moorer, Chief of Naval Operations from 1967 to 1970 and Chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 1970 to 1974, the dislike of Kissinger came down to one word: détente. Détente with the Soviet Union. In sharp contrast to the pure Cowboy Johnson, from whose historical record on Vietnam we can infer that he never met a general that he did not like, it is Nixon's hopelessly entangled relationship with the Department of Defense itself that provides the key to understanding the extraordinarily convoluted parapolitical dynamics of the Nixon Watergate. Nixon's relationships with the senior military officers of the nation were the most complex of those within the upper echelon of government. It was impossible to carry out the war in Southeast Asia without cooperation from the Pentagon, and such matters, central to the overall success of the secret plan, as the secret bombing of Cambodia and the war against North Vietnamese cities, required the support of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But Kissinger courted individual service chiefs and encouraged them to report directly to him rather than to Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird. He also, on behalf of the president, requested that the Joint Chiefs of Staff set up a back channel through which he and Nixon could transmit private messages within the government and abroad. Such back channels were normally operated for the government by the CIA and the National Security Agency. But Nixon wanted to circumvent those intelligence agencies. Using special codes, teletypes, and secure terminals located in the Pentagon and the White House Situation Room, the president and his national security advisor could send and receive messages to selected American officials and members of foreign governments around the world without alerting the rest of the United States government.
You know, one of the things I'd like to interrupt
kind of seems how it ought to be.
It's based, is what it is. It's incredibly based. But you know, this is like one of these things where we're operating against, you know, like a blue and on shitlib, like sort of like these are outside the prescribed channels of American governance. But what we're painting a picture here is of a dual state in which the prescribed channels of American governments are no longer trustworthy. They no longer work. And so, yeah, I mean, it makes sense for the Nixon White House to start handling as much of this stuff directly with as few nodes possessing information as they possibly can. One of the things that I think is interesting here is that because we're not taught there's no wireless in these days. There's not like, you can't just set up a Discord server. I mean, that's what the way DC works today. DC today is just it's an elaborate network of signal chats. There are no signal chats in these days. If you want to set up a special line to the Pentagon, or if you want to bypass the Pentagon, if there's a line that goes from X to Y to Z, and Y is the Pentagon, and you want to reroute it, you have to set up a physical line. There's physical infrastructure that has to be installed here, which is sort of interesting, that because like it's much more difficult to do this clandestine shit back then, because people are going to wire all these people installing new phone lines in the fucking West Wing, you know, like there's more stuff.
I think it's got to be easier. It's got to be easier to do clandestine shit back then.
No, I mean, I don't, because like, how are you going to explain these crews that are coming in and installing new physical infrastructure for communication chat? I mean, it might be easier in some ways, more difficult than others, but this stuff is way more low. Again, I'm always fascinated at the level of technology. This stuff is way more low because the wiretapping. Wiretapping doesn't work anymore because nobody uses wires. You know,
right?
This is this is like all of these things.
You have to put a Stingray cell. You have to put a phony cell tower out and then just take all the data.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's other ways of doing it, but like it all, like from our perspective today, it looks sort of hackneyed and old fashioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I guess, yeah, that's true. Where wiretapping is literally just, you know, putting a receiver on the wire and listening.
And here we're about to get to this though. Yeah. In a way.
The supreme danger of heavy reliance upon back channels, as with the earlier case of JFK, and of course, was that it left the White House unusually dependent upon, and therefore vulnerable to, that very military complex whose cowboy agenda the executive was covertly attempting to terminate. Presidential Domestic Affairs Special Advisor John Ehrlichman once remarked upon the tangible, invisible presence of the armed forces within the Nixon administration. Reflecting on those events, Ehrlichman says he now realizes how vulnerable the White House was to military surveillance. All the cars that we rode in the White House were driven by military drivers. All the telephone calls that we made in and out of our homes, in and out of Camp David, were through a military switchboard. It was a little bit like the purloined letter. It was there so plainly nobody noticed it most of the time. We talked in the cars, we talked on our phones, we talked from Camp David and thought nothing about it. This was part of the warp of the place, that you had military listening or in a position to listen to everything.
You know, just to insert again here, the purloined letter. John Ehrlichman is another one of these brilliantly overeducated individuals.
I mean, it's just Sherlock Holmes.
I know, but I have a sneaking suspicion there is no one in the Trump White House that has ever read the purloined letter.
That is not possible. Miller and Vance have definitely read the purloined letter.
Miller, yes, maybe. I think Vance, I don't know.
You think a guy who wrote a best-selling novel never read Arthur Conan Doyle?
I don't think he wrote that book. I think he was
you don't think he wrote that one?
Yeah, no.
You think
I'm not a JD Vance stan at all.
Interesting.
I have a very dim opinion of it.
So no, really, you think it was ghostwritten?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. I wonder. I wonder if you get a bonus if your ghostwritten book ends up being a bestseller. It wasn't even like a campaign book.
No, but well, it was. It was. I mean, it was a shitlib book, is what it was. But there's all kinds of stuff that goes into that. I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Oh, fair enough. We're doing parapolitics actually. And obviously, Debordian question comes to mind. If JFK's murder was the Joint Chiefs of Staff's attempt to preempt Détente 1, then would this explain the strikingly, almost pathologically paranoid behavior of both Nixon and Kissinger as they, in full knowledge of the clandestine nature of the earlier false flag, attempted a parallel back run around the same back run? Almost said end run, didn't he? He almost said end run because he's definitely read None Dare Call It Conspiracy, right, and just isn't citing it because it's a John Birch Society book and he's a good Marxist.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Back run around the same military intelligence establishment that proved itself capable of killing its own chief executive. And an even more wonderfully ironic Debordian insight. Even if the Warren Commission was correct in its conclusions, would not Nixon's own history of clandestine proclivities lend him to misinterpret the public event of Dealey Plaza as an exercise in spectacular power, counterintelligence plus disinformation, causing him to fall within a parapolitical trap entirely of his own making? Just as with JFK Dallas, Nixon Watergate erupted as a parapolitical counteraction in the form of a false flag spectacle, this time as a bloodless constitutional crisis provoked crucially by the enemy from within. Here, the moment of Schmidt's decision is constitutional in nature, not executive, unlike JFK and Tonkin, but no less of an emergency by that fact alone. This is a comedy of errors, doubles. By God, Nixon's got some former CIA men working for him that I'd kick out of my office. Someday that bunch will serve him up a fine mess. J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover, secret president J. Edgar Hoover. No one has ever been closer to like being like a feudal lord in the U.S. government than J. Edgar Hoover.
It's all sort of interesting casting him as a kind of. I mean, there's like okay, so like J. Edgar Hoover is normally the left wing bad guy, but he's the good guy here because his personal like turf war is being impinged on by Nixon's personal turf war, and he's fighting back. There's all like this is high drama. Like he's indulging the high drama here.
Yeah. Jim Hogan, the author of Secret Agenda, Watergate, Deep Throat in the CIA from literally 1984, the greatest parapolitical account of Nixon Watergate. Footnote: during my work with the Watergate literature, I have not been able to determine that Hogan has ever been made the subject of the same sort of disinformation campaign suffered by many of the JFK Dallas researchers. Provides us with an interesting anecdote. In a conversation with President Nixon, John Dean would one day wonder, how did it all start? Where did it start?
John Dean mentioned.
It started with an instruction to me from Bob Haldeman to see if we couldn't set up a perfectly legitimate campaign intelligence operation over at the re-election committee. Following Hogan, I have constructed a minimalist theory of the spectacle of Nixon Watergate that in many decisive respects parallels the one that I have formulated for JFK Dallas. Just as with Oswald and Phillips Barnes, it consists of only two components. It is the deep background that is complex. 1. G. Gordon Liddy, the ostensible leader of the Plumbers espionage team that broke into the Democratic Party headquarters in the Watergate Hotel, was in actuality a dupe of his subordinates, E. Howard Hunt and James McCord. 2. Hunt and McCord were secretly working for the CIA while using the White House as a cover for domestic intelligence operations that, in Hunt's case, included spying upon the Nixon administration. Wow, former CIA boys still working for the CIA? That's never happened before.
Yeah, working for not really clear who. Like at this point, former CIA though. The former CIA means they could also be working for other people. So they could have Mossad links. They could have KGB ties. They could be working for just
if you are former CIA, you are more of a spook than a current CIA employee.
It's so true.
That is the one thing. The one thing that if you get nothing from this show, please take that if someone says I am former CIA, they are more CIA than they were before.
Super CIA.
You're retired. Yeah, it's like at your retirement party. You get like they walk you out of the room. They have like the party. They give you the watch. Everyone eats cake. You clear off your desk. You walk out of the building. You get into your car. You drive into a tunnel. You take a left halfway through the tunnel that nobody can see, and you go to your new office in the super duper CIA. That's right. there is a footnote here. An interesting fact about McCord was that he also served as lieutenant colonel in a special military reserve unit based in Washington, D.C. that was attached to the highly obscure Office for Emergency Preparedness. Oh, man. They're sending us to FEMA camps. The unit's assignments was to draw up a list of radicals and to help develop a contingency plans for censorship of the news media and U.S. mail in time of war. It was the base department, right? It was the base department. We need that.
Yeah.
We need that again.
I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be out for a second.
Godspeed.
I just say that with like 500 people. Like,
Yeah, you can just go. Yeah. The exact nature of the motive of the stage-managed break-in on June 17th, 1972 is not of central importance. For Hogan, the real targets of the bugging operation were the clients of the prostitutes in the Columbian Plaza apartments for purposes of political blackmail. While for Don Folsom, the objective of the burglars was to acquire information as to the content of suspected conversations between the DNC chairman Larry O'Brien and sometime Nixon supporter Howard Hughes, who had been supplying bribes to the president in exchange for legal favors. Footnote, it was the strong suspicion of the White House that O'Brien was a covert political lobbyist for Hughes, whose global empire of corporations had been effectively folded into the parallel network of CIA front companies. By the early 1970s, the Hughes organization was servicing the CIA in a worldwide basis, becoming the largest private contractor employed by this agency. No job was too big or too small. Hughes Aircraft and the Hughes Tool Company were used as a paymaster type front for undercover agents wherever they might be. Payments would usually be made in cash, Hughes person to CIA person, but at times checks were drawn for CIA personnel on Hughes payroll accounts. Hughes would be reimbursed to the penny and mil by the CIA. Oh man. So I wonder if the fall of TWA was because of CIA budget cuts. Be sad to know. What really matters here is that one, both Hunt and McCord were active CIA operatives for the whole of their time in the White House, and two, that the CIA had consciously decided to destabilize the Nixon presidency, and three, that both Hunt and or McCord deliberately sabotaged the Watergate break-in as the means of doing so, a view shared by no less than the White House Chief of Staff, H.R. Haldeman. The CIA monitored the burglars throughout. Break-in was probably deliberately sabotaged. And it is very unlikely to have been an accident. The Watergate represents the emergence of the doubled two Eduardos of Zapata, Howard Hunt and James McCord, both of whom appear to have been CIA moles planted within the White House. So it has. I was correct in my prediction of where Wilson was going. That's what we can take from this. Beginning in the late fall of 1969, CIA officer Hunt began pestering Colson for employment within the new Nixon administration. As though to prove his status as a former CIA operative, Hunt formally retired from the agency in 1970 and began in yet another slyly Debordian touch working for the Washington-based public relations firm that the Robert R. Mullen Company, which was itself a front corporation for Central Intelligence. Wonderful. I need you to sheep dip me, guys. Can you sheep dip me into a PR company? As Hogan points out, the circumstances of Hunt's retirement from the CIA are important. If it can be shown that his departure was merely an operational convenience, useful for purposes of deniability and perhaps infiltration, then it would appear that the CIA, and not the White House, was Hunt's real principal throughout the Watergate affair. And there is much to suggest this. Footnote, according to Hogan, when it came time for Hunt to undertake a series of questionable intelligence operations, e.g. breaking into the offices of Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist, Dr. Louis J. Fielding, ostensibly on behalf of the White House, was the CIA that provided him with the extensive technical support that the missions required. In a similar way, Hunt relied upon veteran CIA contract agents to help carry out these operations and even applied to the CIA's external employment assistance branch for help in locating men skilled at lockpicking, electronic sweeps, and entry operations. He used the agency to conduct computer name traces as required and had a sterile telephone installed in the White House to ensure the secrecy of his regular telephone conversations with unidentified officials of the CIA. Hunt's retirement from the CIA was dubious in the extreme. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Every single time. I'm not saying it's every time, but I'm saying it's actually every time.
I don't think anybody I mean, it makes sense. It's not really clear to me who believes he ever retired from the CIA. I don't think anybody did. I don't think anybody believes it.
You don't think there was not whomst among us? What single brave soul ever believed that anyone, in fact, had ever retired from the CIA? As I have discussed, both Hunt and McCord were active in the Bay of Pigs operation and therefore had known each other from at least April 1961. Both had shared codename Eduardo, and both therefore were highly familiar with the Operation Mongoose and Alpha 66 anti-Castro Cuban units. In April 1971, Hunt, once more under the moniker Eduardo, traveled to Miami, ostensibly for a 10-year reunion celebration of Zapata with local Cuban operatives. In fact, it was a mission to reactivate key anti-Castro agents who later became members of the Plumbers and therefore the burglars of the Watergate, Frank Sturgis, Bernard Baker, and Eugenio Martinez. You're having a 10-year reunion for a black op.
Yeah. What are you doing?
And that's the cover story.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, I'm just doing a reunion. Oh, really? Like high school, college, lacrosse team, what is it?
Jackie's in her corset, Janie's in her vest. Those were different times.
Yeah, it's just like, we were man. We were training Cuban partisans to overthrow the Castro regime. We were training them on these fucking, what do you call it? On these platforms. Oil. We were training them on oil platforms to invade Cuba. Yeah, it's just a little reunion, just a little, just a little thing, just something with the fellas.
We can have a little Black Ops reunion as a treat.
Yeah. As Martinez makes clear in his memoir about the April 1971 visit, Hunt's purpose was recruitment. What is Manolo doing? What is Roman doing? He said that he wanted to meet with the old people. It was a good sign. We didn't think that he'd come to Miami for nothing. It was in this way, then, that Hunt obtained his agents for secret operations that, as it happened, were as yet undreamed of by the Nixon administration, which would supposedly conceive of and sponsor them. As Charles Colson put in an interview with this writer, Hunt's visit to Barker in April 1971 was pure and simple, a get-ready-for-action call. You'd have to be an idiot to think otherwise. Leaning forward in his chair with a look of anger and perplexity, Colson added, but there wasn't any action anticipated, not then. The Pentagon Papers hadn't been published. The Plumbers were months away. So you tell me, how did Hunt know in April that he'd need the Cubans? And so, I mean, I guess that is the strong link, right? Like, we know what the Cubans did.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the strong link. That's why we're keeping the rest of the team around here. It is also important to keep in mind that as of April 1971, Martinez was still formally working for the CIA. A veteran Operation Mongoose, Martinez was actually still employed by the agency at the time of the break-in, receiving a retainer of $100 a month for reporting on the Cuban exile community in Miami. It's so weird how, what is 1971? Can you Jamie up how much $100 a month is in 1971?
I know. Okay, yeah. See, what was
some of this spook shit just feels a little ticky-tacky, right? Like you want it to pay better.
Well, okay. I know that David Atlee Phillips, if you remember him, it's about $750 a month today. But the David Atlee Phillips was and if you remember, he was our busted thespian that did the whole Guatemala thing.
Yeah.
He was running this is sketchy. He was running an English language newspaper in Santiago, Chile, for some reason that has nothing to do with the CIA, we're told, because
Absolutely.
he was already doing that when the CIA officially started paying him $50 a month.
Oh my God.
And that was in 1957.
So 1950, getting $50 a month in Chile in 1957, that sounds like a good living.
It is. That's not even a bad living now, probably.
That sounds like a good fucking living.
Isn't
Chile the most wealthy South American country? I'm pretty sure it is.
But it's also, they don't have the blue dollar system, but you can live really well for relatively little money there. Because I know a guy that was right adjacent, that he's a literal millionaire that went crazy on stimulants in Chile and donated all of his money to a Hare Krishna cult. And then had to be extracted from a mental asylum.
Amazing. Nice way to get it.
Yeah.
It's also important. Let's see. So $100 a month for reporting on the Cuban exile community in Miami. Yeah, so that's like $800 a month. It's like I'm not getting shot for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This rather inconvenient truth was assigned the greatest importance by Haldeman in his post-Nixon Watergate memoirs. The CIA was connected to the Watergate matter in innumerable ways. Indeed, at least one of the burglars, Martinez, was still on the CIA payroll on June 17, 1972, and almost certainly reporting to his CIA case officer about the proposed break-in even before it happened. The first lawyer in the police precinct when the burglars were brought in the night of June 17th was reportedly a CIA-connected attorney, Douglas Caddy, by the way, there to represent men who had allegedly retired from the agency and had no connection with it. That's loyalty. That's loyalty. Once you're in, you're always in. For Hogan, then, what all these clandestine contacts add up to is the clear implication that the CIA was Howard Hunt's real principal during this time of employment at the White House. Once this is understood, the possibility suggests itself that several of Hunt's White House operations, publicly described as failures, were actually successful. And there's a footnote here. Commenting upon the Senate Watergate Committee's minority staff findings of CIA involvement in the burglary, Minority Counsel Fred Thompson remarked, the question was becoming one of whether the CIA had been a participant or a benign observer of the break-in, or, in view of the bungling of the burglary and the mysterious circumstances surrounding it, whether CIA operatives had perhaps sabotaged the break-in to weaken the White House and strengthen the agency in its struggle for survival. Thus, within the mass media, Hunt would, by virtue of this immaculate incompetence, come to be seen as a kind of clown, a spook whose operations inevitably backfired. Thus, the press, while condemning those who dismissed the Watergate break-in as a mere caper or third-rate burglary, would nevertheless be quick to pronounce the burglars bunglers. Just as Nixon forces wished that we would dismiss the break-in with a laugh, so did liberal Democrats and the press intend that we should dismiss the burglars with a grin. This was so in large part because Nixon's enemies wished to make a morality play of the affair. Necessarily, this entailed a simple story with the president at its center. Close scrutiny of the burglars and of the burglaries themselves was to be avoided because such scrutiny raised questions about their loyalty to President Nixon. This, in turn, obscured the issue of presidential guilt and, in so doing, threatened Nixon's ouster. In a sense, therefore, the Democrats and the press were as much opponents of a full investigation of the Watergate affair as was the White House itself. Both sides had reason to fear the truth. That's good. So we have multiple. So there are actually, no, it's just the same faction, right? Like that's just the same faction, actually. It's not like the Democrat Party was guiltless in this. It's just they're allied, actually. So if he's going to do this parapolitical thing where he's imputing these associations, he should at least have the decency to be a formalist, right? So if
Right.
they're working together, it's because they're allied. Easy. And just as with JFK Dallas, we have an implicit division of labor and intent between the spectacle itself and the media representation, the cover-up of the event, phase 1, the burglary, and phase 2, the story. The vital difference, however, is that unlike with the earlier false flag, both phases of Nixon Watergate were thoroughly integrated and coordinated, constituting a far more integrated and integrating exercise of the strategy of tension, this representing the thorough convergence of cowboy and Yankee interests. Nixon Watergate as integrated spectacle. What?
I'm also having a moment where I realized that the typesetting, the typeface used in this book is the same one that I used in a section of my book, and I'm wondering if that. Yeah, so many things are wrong here.
Nixon Watergate as integrated spectacle. Our recent history is a forgery by the byproduct of secret agents acting on secret agendas of their own.
None dare call it conspiracy.
I mean, that's a pretty based fucking quote.
Yeah.
Like, a strange and basically stupid sequence then unfolded.
An even more base quote.
Yes. A strange and basically stupid sequence that unfolded. Well, okay, I'm starting to come around to your perspective that these guys were actually just smarter and better read than anyone we have nowadays.
No, they
Right.
weren't.
Because both of those
100%
are banger quotes, and these guys, worked in the admin.
I mean, Haldeman is. I mean, he's primo. He's. I mean, there's an argument to be made that. I mean, again, my sub thread throughout this book is this is the high watermark and the decline. This is the high watermark of the WASP high watermark, and then the sort of rapid imposition of the conclusion of the WASP state. These were our best guys. These are our top guys. Even if you watch the much maligned JFK film, the sequence in which Donald Sutherland appears, he's like, we were good in Indochina. We were good here. We were good here. We were good here. We were bad at the Bay of Pigs. That's sort of the declaration that this was it for us. And of course, it's also the subtext of the Good Shepherd. It's like what do your people have? The United States of America. The rest of you are just visiting. This is the end. This is the end of our game. Our game was the United States of America, and these were our best players playing it at the highest fever pitch. And we took too much. We took too much, WASP bros. We took too much.
And then you got demographically replaced by Ellis Islanders. Well, time comes for us all in a wave of brown hands. Let's see here. In his comments on the Society of the Spectacle, DeBoard makes much of Nixon and Watergate, although in a manner that the orthodox North American liberal would find scandalous. The successful stage managing of the constitutional coup d'etat at the heart of Nixon-Watergate spectacle signifies not the apotheosis of the transparently democratic public state, but its termination. It seems, Sandbatch, you have anticipated some of Guy Debord. The widespread talk of a legal state only dates from the moment when the modern... Actually, hold on. The widespread talk of a legal state only dates from the moment when the modern so-called democratic state generally ceases to be one. Never before has the censorship been so perfect. People often cite the United States as an exception because the Nixon eventually came to grief with a cease of denials whose clumsiness was too cynical. But this entirely local exemption, for which there were some historical causes, clearly no longer holds true, since Reagan has recently been able to do the same thing with impunity. Kind of fell apart. Yeah, kind of got a little Spanish.
And I want you to keep the French accent for the rest of the show. And I think that's a brilliant idea.
Hon, hon, hon. Yeah.
I like how you say "Sally." As so, yeah. Let's both do it and see how long people stick
That's right.
around.
Even more than either with JFK Dallas or LBJ Tonkin. I think I might have another. There might be another DeBoard quote. Maybe I should just do all the quotes in an outrageous French accent. Even more than either with JFK Dallas or LBJ Tonkin, Nixon Watergate was played out through the media capillaries of the integrated spectacle. The generic term Watergate eventually became synonymous with media leaks. Yeah, we did. We of course got we got gate as a suffix, right? It's such a weird thing, but I mean, it's like an artifact of English, right? It's just how people parse things.
It's now there. It's there the way pilled. It's like gate, pilled, and coded. Oh, those are the three great prefixes of the late 20th century.
Coded at least requires a hyphen, I think. But gate is a true suffix.
Yeah, it's a brilliant neologism. Like you can deploy it at any time. People who are not aware of what Watergate is
will say gate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you misorder a pizza and someone is mad at you, you're gonna get it'll be pepperoni gate. Right.
That's another thing that's interesting is like the Watergate Hotel is like not the Watergate Hotel is actually it's a really interesting physical artifact, but you could be walking around it and like have relatively little unless you know that that's what it is, like you can have like no idea that that's what you're walking by. It's like it's almost
rather anonymous looking hotel.
I mean, no, it's big and it's there, but it's like you don't like unless it's like pointed out to you as that, and then you look at it and you're like, oh yeah.
Got it. It was the sheer saturation of the media coverage that invested the spectacle with power, while paradoxically enabling the clandestine nature of the deep event to hide in plain sight. For nearly 2 years, and the country had been blitzed by the minutia of Watergate and force-fed the images of increasingly uninteresting men. Ow! Increasingly uninteresting men is a powerful.
Isn't it?
That's so mean. Increasingly uninterested men.
How I feel every morning when I log into Twitter.
Increasingly uninteresting.
Yeah.
Oh no. Was there anybody left who did not consider himself a reluctant expert on the topic? Probably not. For it was precisely through the mass conscription of the mass population into the ranks of the experts that the integrative function of the spectacle was allowed to establish itself as common sense. Of all the media that helped develop and popularize the orthodox version, none was greater importance to the story of Watergate's hometown newspaper. Wait, this is DeBoard, isn't it?
I don't know. I was wondering if this is DeBoard, but I don't think it is. I think
it's DeBoard.
DeBoard.
Yes. Actually, oh no, wait, no, it's not. It's not DeBoard. Sorry, it's Hogan. No. It's Hogan.
It's Hogan.
Yeah. Yep. The Post was uniquely well equipped to cover and influence this particular story.
Yeah, it was worth pointing out that WAPO was nothing until the Pentagon Papers and this. It was like a third-rate newspaper, and then it became like I think Washington Times was actually the bigger newspaper in Washington D.C. until this was WAPO
until a naval intelligence spook gave them the scoop.
Yeah.
So you're saying the Washington Post is a carve out?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, it's the glowiest of the glow rags.
Yeah. Uniquely well equipped to cover and influence this particular story. It was the newspaper that the scandal's principal read each morning at the breakfast table, and as such, it contributed directly to shaping the debate within both the Capitol and the Capitol. The Post, moreover, was a newspaper whose senior editors and reporters belonged to that part of the Washington establishment, which is immune to changes in political administration.
The deep state.
Yeah. In truth, the Post did not truly reveal the story of the initial break-in and subsequent cover-up. Rather, it reported the results from ongoing investigations being conducted by the federal prosecutors and a grand jury in the summer fall of 1972. A footnote: from the outset, local Washington reporting, especially in the Post, closely tracked the FBI's work, relying primarily on raw bureau reports. Instead, that newspaper's primary function lay with the publication of eye-popping stories, preceding disclosures by law enforcement that built momentum and drew in the rest of the press at a time when Watergate might otherwise have faded from public view. Yeah. Throughout Nixon Watergate, there appears to have been at work a very precise mechanism of timed disclosures and strategically calculated leaks. Yeah, there we go.
Now, I mean, this is true, and like, you know, there's actually a great documentary featuring Hunter S. Thompson, and this really, and as a reporter, the Watergate break-ins and the Watergate coverage was his real break as a serious reporter. Like, he had done Fear and Loathing, and he'd done Fear and Loathing. He'd done 2 Fear and Loathings at this point, but this was like his ongoing coverage of Watergate was and he even remarks on this in real time about how it just seems like this whole thing is just like, it's like every couple of days when interest starts to wane, oh, there's a new bomb drop. Oh, John Dean's gonna testify. Oh, this is gonna happen. You know, it's just like haymakers being thrown by both sides. And in reality, we're watching the script that the liberal media the mainstream media has deployed repeatedly. This is when we talk about political scripts, this is the template which has been used to like sort of guide opinion making mechanisms inside the
dog walk the public to a predestined conclusion.
Yeah, exactly. And it didn't stop working until like 2 years ago, you know.
It didn't stop working until, let me see,
I think the pandemic was when it broke.
I mean, it didn't really work. It didn't work in 2016.
It didn't. And what's interesting, and like honestly, when I said John Dean mentioned, and I mentioned John Dean a second ago, I knew the night I knew Trump was going to win. The night I knew he was going to win the Republican primary at like the second.
When no one gave a shit about the pussy tape.
No, it was
Access Hollywood tape. They call it.
It was in the second debate when Ted Cruz said he'd done something illegal and said something about him, and he just grabbed the mic and responded, "I'm going to sue you," and everyone else shut up. I was like, he's going to run away with this. But I knew Trump was going to win the national election whenever John Dean, of all people, got trotted out to do a WAPO opinion piece for Hillary Clinton. And I was like, oh man, this is busted. I was like, they've got nothing. They've got, so yeah, I guess 2016 was what it broke.
But in a previous, in any previous, if they wanted to get rid of someone, you could just make a whatever mountain you needed out of anything. Like, remember, speaking of Deans, remember Howard Dean? Howard Dean was the front runner in 2004 when obvious spook John Kerry was up at bat, right? The DNC wanted him. But Howard Dean was kind of a light populist and was gaining a lot of steam when he just kind of used the microphone wrong and went like, yeah, right, in a way that was considered like no one would. You can go listen to the Howard Dean scream at some point, but no one would have thought anything of it, except it turned into this major media scandal, which was entirely cooked up and seemed ridiculous at the time. But he literally did not win the primary. He was in the front. He was a front runner by a lot, and he lost the primary because of that. So there was this period. There was this period in 2004 where they could literally do anything. They could make anything stick. Right? They didn't even need to cook up anything. They just find a random, any random item and turn it into a massive scandal. But then in 2016, they were like, all right, well, we timed all this out. We got Trump nominated. like, this is amazing. We're going to take him out with this like killer piece of, embarrassing compromise. And then they put it out and everyone was like, yeah, I mean, this is Donald Trump. What were you expecting? Right? No one gave a shit. No one gave a single solitary fuck about the Access Hollywood tape. It didn't change a single mind. And like, they're still trying. They're like, they still try it because they don't fully understand that.
Well, they don't have anything else.
Does not work. Yeah, like, they'll still say grab. Like, boomer women will still say grab them by the pussy as if that matters. It doesn't matter. So, yeah, but like, that is the biggest break, right? Like, the script didn't work anymore. So that's when I'd put it on. Randall Shirker for $10 says, just remember, Cap, most Italian dishes they give us American shit over for making wrong originated in America, per an Italian food historian that they hate. Yeah, well, I mean, look.
Yeah, because gabagool is an American thing.
Yeah, no one. Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even like gabagool is like a New Jersey Italian thing.
Yeah,
right. So it's not even all Italians not even all Italian Americans say gabagool. Like, when I grew up, it was called capicola, right?
Right.
And so the first time I heard gabagool was
the thing about the Dago dishes
was The Sopranos.
Like, my understanding, and like, we're way off course here now, but like, all of the red sauces there's tomatoes. That's American.
Oh yeah, well, obviously, yeah. I mean, well, if we were just talking about like pre-Columbian cooking in the old world, pre-Columbian cooking in the old world is actually a super fucking fascinating topic in general. I could actually talk about for multiple hours at a time.
Oh yeah, you're even more of a hipster than me. Capitalisimo uses black vinegar. That's how much a hipster he is.
I have read the Ayurveda sections of Atharva Veda in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Which is a cookbook. It's a cookbook. The magical system in that is a cookbook. So, but it's like, it's Central Asian and South Indian food that existed before spice, like before hot peppers and a bunch of shit. So it is wildly different. It is like it is very similar to Roman cooking.
Yeah, they use that fermented fish sauce and
liquamen. Yeah,
and Italians used a lot more rice back then, arborio rice.
Yep. Yeah, you had liquamen and like heavy use of black pepper, use of several kinds of peppers that are basically not even used anymore, like that are in the same family as black pepper.
Which is not even a pepper; it's a peppercorn.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. But then there are other breeds that actually the black pepper being dominant is a whole other thing. Anyway, we are super far off of
back to Nixon Watergate.
Yeah, back to Nixon Watergate. Nixon hated pepper. Anyway, I'm not even sure where on this page I am.
Next week's
throughout Nixon Watergate, there appears to have been a workup, precise mechanism, strategically calculated leaks, mass media at all times operated in perfect synchronization with the FBI and the Department of Justice. Contrary to the widely held perception that the Washington Post uncovered Watergate, the newspaper essentially tracked the progress of the FBI's investigation with a time delay ranging from weeks to days and published elements of the prosecutor's case well in advance of the trial. Keeping the story in the news was meaningful and important, of course, especially when that newspaper was the Post. Owing to its prize readership, it had an influence that far outstripped its circulation. The more things changed, the more they stayed the same, huh? Every important official in Washington and every reporter based there read the Post, which meant the newspaper was an elite publication, in that it helped define the news coming out of Washington. Perhaps most significantly, the Nixon administration reacted initially to the Post's stories by denying and dissembling, creating an epic credibility gap with the media and eventually the public, from which the White House never recovered.
Yeah. They panicked. They panicked is what happened.
Yeah, they panicked. Exactly. So integrating was the spectacle as media that even the nominally independent judiciary had no other realistic political option than to serve as the hapless pawn of phase two. For all intents and purposes, Watergate judge John Sirica was co-opted by the Post. Sirica read the Post on his way to court each day, with the result that its questions often became his questions. Oh no, Poster's in control.
Posters, post truth.
Yep. As the Washingtonian, a liberal magazine, described Sirica's conduct of the trial, he badgered accused and castigated witnesses, prosecutors, and defense lawyers. He read transcripts and confidential bench conferences to the jury. He used the threat of lengthy sentences to force defendants into abandoning their constitutional rights. He turned the trial into an inquisition and justice into a charade. In this light, the significance and timing of James McCord's notorious and unsolicited letter of confession to Judge Sirica, claiming that the CIA was being framed by the White House as being behind the break-in, at the very moment that the prosecution of the burglars had effectively stalled, becomes that much greater. The impact of McCord's March 19, 1973 letter to Sirica is lost on no one. The letter is what kicked Nixon over the precipice by conclusively identifying the Watergate operation with the White House. McCord was the first to say that John Mitchell was implicated, that CRREP, Committee to Re-elect the President, money was used to hush up plumbers, predominantly Hunt, that the White House was trying to hide behind the CIA and at the same time put the CIA in its pocket, and that Nixon was the master of the White House cover-up operation.
Now, this is from Oglesby, I should point out. And like the footnote here is sort of interesting. It's also worth pointing out that the burglar Frank Sturgis has been both a friend and a contact for Washington syndicated columnist Jack Anderson since the Bay of Pigs. Anderson was also a friend and protege of Joint Chiefs of Staff Mole Charles Radford. Anderson was also the journalist who published a leak concerning the White House's tilt away from India towards Pakistan during the Pakistan War in 1971, infuriating both Nixon and Kissinger, Kolodny and Gatlin, 1820 and 1416. Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
East Pakistan War before Bangladesh split off.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah, no, that's yeah. So of course the Post was just shot through with spooks and spook adjacents. No less did the trial of the Watergate burglary, and again, like this is all just like, you know, one thing that the parapolitical liberals and us can agree on wholeheartedly is is that neutral institutions do not exist because neutral people do not exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of interesting because like whenever I worked in DC, one of the thing that I was most often involved in, again, the guys that I worked for these years, 74. So the guy that I worked for initially, the guy that I worked for the most was he was a character who was involved in setting up what was called the Congressional Club, which is one of the first super PACs. But the thing I was contracted on and the projects that I worked on generally were conducting PR campaigns that were not aimed at the general public. They were aimed at inside the belt, they were inside the beltway. So the idea was to use information dissemination methods that only people inside Washington D.C. would have been privy. Not even people inside D.C., really inside the federal compound, like specifically like federal workers and that sort of thing. The documents that they read, and it was sort of fascinating that even as recently as 2020. That there was, and these guys were they were really in the twilight of their effectiveness by the time I was working for them, but they were in fact very interested in the Washington Post and the Washingtonian, and these were the rags that they were interested in influencing. And it's really interesting to see here. It's like, okay, Sirica was reading WAPO, was reading Washingtonian, and like getting, it's like making first impressions, getting your thoughts into these people's head is like it's a first mover advantage in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No less did the trial of the Watergate burglars itself become a spectacle within a spectacle, both a cause and effect of the integrative function. This is precisely what we should suspect, given the post not inconsiderable ties with the CIA. Central to this parapolitical network was Robert Bennett, Hunt's supervisor at the Robert R. Mullen Company, a CIA company that had extensive involvement with the JM Wave affiliated broadcasting station Radio Free Cuba, set up in the immediate aftermath of the Bay of Pigs. A CIA agent himself, Bennett met with his own agency case officer, Martin Lukowski, on July 10th, 1972, less than 4 weeks after the burglary. Later that month, Lukowski submitted a handwritten memorandum of his most recent meeting with Bennett directly to CIA Director Helms. Mr. Bennett related that he has now established backdoor entry to the Edward Bennett Williams law firm, which is representing the Democratic Party in its suit for damages resulting from the Watergate incident. Footnote: the official Senate Watergate report stated that Bennett served as the point of contact between Hunt and Liddy during the 2 weeks following the Watergate break-in. All right. And in March 1973, Lukowski's supervisor, Eric Einstadt, submitted his own memorandum on Bennett to Helms. Mr. Bennett said that he has been deeding stories to Bob Woodward of the Washington Post with the understanding that there is no attribution to Bennett. Woodward is suitably grateful for the fine stories and bylines which he gets and protects Bennett and the Mullen Company. Bennett also said that if necessary, he could have his father, Senator Bennett of Utah, intercede with Senator Sam Ervin, head of the Senate committee investigating Watergate. His conclusion then was that he could handle the Ervin committee if the agency can handle Howard Hunt. Just as phase one of Nixon. And so of course now we are just printing press releases from the agencies in the Washington Post as journalism, right?
Many such cases.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember the former British agent that did the golden showers, like the golden showers limited hangout, the Trump dossier, whatever the name of that. That's all. It's literally the same script.
Well, yeah, but also, you mean Steele?
Yeah, the Steele dossier.
Yeah, well, I mean, they fabricated that's a little different because they made fake documents, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a limited hangout. It's a modified limited hangout. Modified
limited hangout. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But there's also like you're just, I don't know. The thing that like might be a little frustrating to people is that this is like the example that people use to say, oh, well, we need free journalism. Like we need free journalists to speak truth to power, right? And then it's like, oh no, actually, it was just press releases from the CIA. But
yeah, it's like literally the like fucking Hinge woman who like the other day she's like, oh, I'm a copywriter for fashion magazine. She's like, I just use ChatGPT. I'm like, oh yeah, so much for the free press. Like it's even worse. It's later than you think, you know. Oh, fuck.
I don't know. I think that's a little based. I think it's a little based because then you're not getting female opinions published.
Yeah, fair. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. I mean, you just sometimes you got to turn it around and think on the bright side, right? Although it's probable that because GPT, like they're very they use the shit out of like. What is it? Reddit is the first source, and like Wikipedia is number 2 for most of the things.
Yeah,
but you're actually already just getting female. You're getting female opinion anyway.
Just way more of them than you thought. It's like it's the aggregate female opinion, which is even worse. Yeah. Just as phase one of Nixon Watergate came down to parapolitical nomadicism of two covert agents, Hunt and McCord, it would appear that phase two was the handwork of other equally clandestine doubles. Hot.
Bob Woodward, the more Radford affair. In this manner, nothing is beyond the realm of possibility. Richard M. Nixon. Yes, Big Ben. In this house, we believe females. That's what we believe. It is totally fair. It is today fairly well established that Bob Woodward, the iconic heroic reporter most closely identified with the story of Watergate, was an agent of naval intelligence throughout his journalistic career. After graduating, I say Frost earlier, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Bob Woodward, of course. Throughout his journalistic career, after graduating from Yale in 1965, Woodward enlisted in the Navy and was assigned to serve as a communications officer aboard the USS Wright, the designated National Emergency Command post afloat. The president's command vessel in the event of national emergency. You get The Last Ship. Was that a show? I feel like that was a show. Like there was like a 1 or 2 season streaming show about the president and the some survivors living on an aircraft carrier and everyone else was fucking dead.
It's the Poseidon Adventure.
That's not the Poseidon Adventure. The Poseidon Adventure is when the boat flips over and the fat lady has to swim. I remember that fat lady dying of a heart attack because I watched that movie when I was like 7.
Yeah.
Anyway, it made me hate fat people forever.
That's debased.
Yeah. What show the Poseidon Adventure to your kids. In 1969, under the tutelage of Admiral Robert O. Wellender, Woodward was assigned to the Pentagon, where he served as the communications duty officer for then Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Moorer. In Hogan's own words, it was a fascinating assignment for someone so young. In his new position, Woodward presided over all communications traffic going to and from the CNO's office. This included top secret communiques from the White House, the CIA, the National Security Agency, and State Department, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Council. He held, in other words, a position of strategic trust within the intelligence community. While others of much higher rank and longer service labored within the constraints of the need-to-know stricture, Woodward was in an oversight position vis-a-vis a broad spectrum of interagency intelligence operations. Possibly of, let's see here, Big Ben clarifying, I'm saying your LLMs are transcoded. Oh, man, so true. Although we did establish earlier that coded means, coded requires a hyphen. But yeah, that's that is true. That is true. LLMs do. You have to specifically, if you're going to talk about anything related to that, you always have to be sure to tell the LLM not to use pronouns.
I don't understand. Y'all y'all have serious skill issues with LLMs. My LLMs sounds like a CIA dispatcher from 1957.
What?
Yeah, like I have oh god, I'm so good at prompting, but y'all are I'm the best at prompting. I'm sorry, haters and losers, but my prompts are some of the best.
My prompts, your prompts bring forth Skynet. Like you commune directly with the lofty Landian powers, right?
I do, yeah.
You are not talking to the gay robot.
The machine elves are sitting on my shoulders right now. That's
right. Yes, you are the person that I know most likely to be possessed. Possibly of even greater significance was the political relationship between Woodward's commanding officer, Admiral Moorer, and the Nixon White House. What made Moorer an exceptionally powerful CNO was his ability to get along well with two of the administration's most powerful figures, Attorney General John Mitchell and Henry Kissinger. Because he was trusted by them, very little was kept from him. And the man through whom much of that information passed was Lieutenant Woodward. The complicated and still shadowy history of Nixon Watergate as a deep event illuminates clearly the covert dimensions of the crusader journalist hero Bob Woodward. There's nothing been printed in this book with greater sarcasm.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what I was talking about, like the reporting on Watergate is just like used as
I mean, it can't be. That's worth stating again how thoroughly Watergate created the generation of personages who were considered. I mean, this like Watergate wiped the baby boomers' brains, and like
completely.
from 1974 until in some cases almost down to the present. Like I remember in Trump administration 1. Like Bob Woodward was going to do a hardcore interview with Trump. Like all of the media figures that emerged from Watergate as like trusted individuals. First of all, they're all glow, and like they remained in power in the media until like very recently.
Yeah. I'm still just hanging out, being awful ghouls. Let's see. In December 1971, the White House was made aware of a covert military intelligence ring operating within the NSC. The locus of the operation was with the Joint Chiefs of Staff liaison officer to the NSC, headed at that time by Admiral Robert Welander. Under Wellander's direction, Navy Yeoman Charles Edward Radford had penetrated the inner workings of the NSC as a mole and had begun passing on sensitive NSC documents to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Most of these documents appear to have related to the groundwork negotiations for Détente 2. Radford's materials were handed over to Welander in person, who then physically conveyed them to Admiral Moorer, who had been appointed Chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff by Nixon the previous July. According to Nixon Watergate researchers Lee Kolodny and Robert Getlin, Radford knew that his actions gave his superiors an excellent overview of what was going on in the White House. Knowledge is power, and the more they knew about all the peripheral data regarding the White House operation, the more they were able to circumvent and to maneuver and to accomplish their own ends. And what, we asked him, did he think those ends were? He told us, well, bringing Nixon down, really getting rid of Kissinger. Kissinger was a real monkey wrench in things. It's also kind of funny how both in both None Dare Call It Conspiracy and in this, Kissinger is just like this omnipresent like wizard.
Imagine being like, we're gonna bring it's like stealing the Declaration of Independence. We're gonna bring down Henry Kissinger.
You can't. Yeah, no. The crazy thing is, he spent so much time. Spent so much of his life with people trying to take him down. He eventually like evolved into a sphere. Impossible to knock over.
Yeah, there are no edges to attack.
No attack surfaces. You can't knock over a ball. You're just repositioning it.
You attempt to bring him down. He absorbs your life force and lives for another 20 years.
Yep, that's right. Kissinger is just, Kissinger is eternal. Is eternal.
I met him.
Did you?
I met him on January 6, 2020. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wild.
Were you making your weekly report to Henry Kissinger?
No, I have a tendency to miss important events. But I have a tendency to be around important events, but not be like totally like fucked by them. And I was in DC for like reasons that day, but I was also working, and I had a lunch date at a restaurant that I won't name. And Henry Kissinger came, and I was like, when Henry Kissinger was in attendance, and when he came in, everyone in the building, everyone in the room stood up for him, and I was like,
people who didn't know he was there stood up.
I mean, it kind of was like that because I was faced away from him as he came in, and everybody stood up, and I was like, what? And so I just stand up and I would turn around, and I didn't even have to ask what was happening. It was like, hey, yeah, I just saw him. I'm like, oh wow, it's Henry Kissinger, and I even briefly met him. Yeah. I'm at the Forrest. I'm like Forrest Gump. There's just like no way around it. But
Commenting to both investigators about Radford's behavior, Rear Admiral Jean R. LaRoque remarked that you have to understand that with the military, it's us versus them, the Navy in particular. Civilians are all to be feared and distrusted and guarded against, so that reading their traffic was all considered legitimate. What LaRoque did not helpfully ruminate upon was the fact that Welander was Woodward's commanding officer on the young lieutenant's second posting, the USS Fox. Furthermore, from 1969 to 70, Woodward served as the Joint Chiefs of Staff briefing officer to General Alexander Haig, Kissinger's chief aide on the National Security Council. As someone who was closely connected to Radford, in December 1970, Radford was appointed military aide-de-camp to Haig during the general's trip to Saigon and Phnom Penh. And it was Haig, as Joint Chiefs of Staff liaison to Kissinger at the NSC, who helped establish the military back channel that permitted the National Security Advisor to bypass both the Departments of State and Defense. From all of this, I can only conclude the following. If Woodward continued an informal connection with the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the time of the Watergate scandal, as both Hunt and McCord apparently did with the CIA, then it increases the possibility that the Washington Post coverage of the story, even if only unintentionally, formed part of a managed false flag spectacle. The exact same, in fact, seems to have been the case with the FBI. All right, we're getting into the spicy bits.
Yeah, and now we arrive at Deep Throat.
Deep Throat, W. Mark Felt. Honestly, like even though I recognize this is a glowy op and was obviously a glowy op, right? Very funny to go with a porn name. Very funny, extremely humorous.
Yeah.
I suspect that Mark Felt's mind was his agent. In Mark Felt's mind, I was his agent, Bob Woodward. I want every fucking cocktail party in Georgetown talking about this. Watergate, Ben Bradley. Until former FBI Associate Director W. Mark Felt's outing as Deep Throat in 2005, Felt served as Associate Director of the Bureau from May 1972 to June 1973. Woodward had always strenuously denied that his cryptic source, Deep Throat, spectacularly betrayed by Hal Holbrook in the equally spectacular film of Nixon Watergate, Alan Pakula's All the President's Men, which is a good movie, good fiction, good solid fiction. A blockbuster adaptation of the spectacular tell-all book of the same title, co-authored by Woodward and Carl Bernstein, Irish name, had been a member of the intelligence community. This, of course, was disingenuous. The FBI has always been responsible for domestic counterintelligence operations and a member of the intelligence community ever since that term became part of Washington parlance. Although Woodward repeatedly presented Felt's motives as ones of unabashed patriotism and civic virtue, Hogan claims to have discerned a revealing pattern of fake altruism to Deep Throat's well-timed leaks. It's almost like it was his job.
Yeah.
The almost visceral effects of Felt's strategic campaign of the clandestine is well conveyed by Haldeman. It took bombshell after bombshell to destroy a powerful president. What is fascinating in reconstructing the true story of Watergate is both the timing of those bombshells and the surprise twists which made their shock even more effective. Nixon was never prepared. Time and again, after he thought he had stabilized his ship of state and knew every danger lurking in the waters, another torpedo would explode amidships, and Nixon and his crew, including me, would frantically be shoring up bulkheads against a sea of outrage. Haldeman. Great. Amazing. It may be that Deep Throat remains anonymous as of 1984, because if he was identified, our perception of him and of the post-Watergate reportage would change. That's very true. That is, it may be that Throat's position within the Nixon administration was such that he would stand revealed as a Machiavellian figure moved more by his own ambitions than by any concern for fair play in national politics. In which case, Woodward and the Post would seem to be mere tools in a power struggle. So there is reason to be skeptical. While Woodward and Bernstein prefer to believe in Deep Throat's altruism, we should not trust their judgment on the matter. The Post reporters, after all, have an important stake in the selflessness of their source. Much more recently, Max Holland also challenged the authenticity of Felt's nobler form of patriotism by arguing for the careerist motivation of his leaking. Angered at being passed over for promotion to the directorship of the FBI in favor of Justice Department official and Nixon lackey L. Patrick Gray III, Felt attempted to force the White House to reverse itself by illuminating Gray's incompetence through a series of selective leaks to the press, primarily the Post and Time Life. That is a profoundly gay motivation. Footnote: in All the President's Men, Woodward provides several examples, perhaps unknowingly, of Felt's multiple strategic leaking. Funny. The portrait of Felt that emerges when we follow this threshold does not resemble any of Bob Woodward's depictions of Deep Throat. Felt held the news media in contempt and was neither a high-minded whistleblower, nor was he genuinely concerned about defending his institution's integrity. He was not even hopelessly embittered, just calculating. A single-minded determination drove him, even as his chances to be named director, slim to begin with, evaporated. A key part of the argument here is that Mark Felt had no thought of bringing Nixon down. Nixon's downfall was an entirely unanticipated result of Felt's true and only aim. It seems a little convenient. Of course, a potentially fatal flaw with Holland's robust advocacy of the careerist theory of Deep Throat is that Holland himself may be a CIA asset embedded in the media, as has been argued by Mark Lane. Mark Lane, we're back on Mark Lane. Footnote with Lane: although listed in the bibliography, there is no reference made to secret agenda in the copious endnotes of Leak. According to the author of the now standard history of the Watergate scandal, mainstream historian Stanley L. Cutler, Hogan has established the most thorough reconstruction of the crime. Cutler himself is something of an agnostic concerning domestic counterintelligence. Questions regarding the CIA appear in various segments of the Watergate story. The agency's role, however, seems destined to remain shadowy. Cutler does concede, however, that Nixon's entanglement with Watergate surely allowed the agency to escape confrontation with a president apparently bent on tightening his own command and control of it. For his part, Holland recycles the long-since worn-out official explanation for the break-in. The purpose of the June 17th re-entry was to fix the bug on the telephone of DNC Chairman Larry O'Brien's secretary. It had been initially installed on May 28th. For a contrarian opinion, see Haldeman, 21. Every professional politician in Washington, including Nixon and myself, knew that no political knowledge of any value could ever be found in party headquarters. The candidates' headquarters contained all the vital information. The Democratic National Committee, like its Republican counterpart, is little more than a ceremonial shell before the convention takes place. To isolate the break-in as a simple political intelligence action is to require sweeping under the rug an absolute mountain of conflicting evidence.
That's the first time we've ever done that at the same time.
Yeah. So, I guess you have to be. I guess you have to like not say that actually the entire government is a nest of vipers. If you're the the official standard sensible centrist historian, right?
Well, I don't know that he's in the past, he's leaning pretty far out, but he's coming back in to staple it to something grounded occasionally.
Yeah. If this is correct, what effect does this have on the veracity of Holland's not implausible critique of Deep Throat as selfless patriot? The best answer may be that Felt's covert stratagems constitute a possible continuation of the parapolitical fallout prophesized by Hoover following the announcement of the Houston Plan. As Holland himself recognizes, the Houston Plan threatened to encroach on the FBI's turf and prerogatives from Hoover's vantage point. And in point of fact, the White House was apparently completely unaware of the extent of the FBI's vigorous counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, designed to disrupt, confuse, and ultimately vitiate domestic groups deemed subversive.
James Jesus Angleton mentioned.
Yeah. It was also worth keeping in mind the memorandum of the Watergate saboteur James McCord submitted on May 7, 1973 to federal prosecutors and the Senate Watergate Investigating Committee. When I saw what was happening to the FBI under Pat Gray, political control by the White House, it appeared that the two government agencies, which should be able to prepare their reports and to conduct their businesses with complete integrity and honesty in the national interest, were no longer going to be able to do so. That the nation was in serious trouble and has since been confirmed by what happened in the case of Gray's leadership of the FBI. Footnote, Haldeman on McCord's memo. What he wrote in arcane bureaucratic language is that the CIA feared Nixon would preempt the CIA as it had the FBI.
That Haldeman is great. I mean,
Yeah.
Haldeman's actually one of these. He's one of these demonized figures that actually. The thing he does worse is that kind of little footnote right there where he says things exactly how they are.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I have not read Haldeman's. I have not read his memoir of the period, but these quotes make it sound very good. COINTELPRO was organized into 6 divisions. I love me some COINTELPRO. Don't we, folks?
I'm COINTELPRO's strongest soldier.
Was organized into 6 divisions: the U.S. Communist Party, the Socialist Workers Party, the Puerto Rican National Independence Movement, the KKK and affiliated white hate groups, the Black Panthers and allied black militant groups, and the generic New Left.
Now this is, oh God, here we go. Keep going.
Felt was a senior coordinator of these programs, and it is not difficult to see, as does Holland, that Felt's theatrical assumption of the covert role as Deep Throat was a direct continuation of his earlier counterintelligence efforts. He stayed at the Bureau after Gray's appointment and worked for almost a year on what might be called his own psychological warfare plan. COINTELPRO was designed to disrupt and confuse his adversaries and manipulate those in power. Pat Gray and Associate Director William Sullivan were the intended victims. The White House, and to a lesser extent Congress, were the targets of his manipulations, and the press was his instrument of choice. The bulk of Felt's effort would consist of trying to prove to the White House, through anonymous links to the media, that Gray was dangerously incompetent and incapable of running the Bureau. Felt was supremely confident that because of his extensive counterintelligence experience, he could keep his hand invisible. I mean, he's not really that wrong. Right. I mean, it took decades. So, also worth noting was that leaking information to certifiably reliable reporters and columnists was a central component in all of FBI's COINTELPRO programs, and also used as part of its orchestrated effort to discredit Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, the orchestrated effort to discredit Martin Luther King Jr. include dropping to specific reporters tapes of his enjoyment of raping white prostitutes in motel rooms.
Yes, true information of the many crimes of MLK.
Can't believe that was used to discredit Martin Luther King.
Can't believe it could possibly be used. Yeah. Apparently, Felt's second favorite reliable reporter after Bob Woodward was organized crime reporter Sandy Smith of Time magazine. How do you get this sweet ass job where you don't do anything and spooks just drop pieces of writing in your lap and you publish them as your own work and you have a whole storied career?
Let me tell you, it doesn't pay as well as you want it to.
I mean, maybe not. I'm just saying.
What do you think we're doing right here?
What do you think we're doing? Wait, you guys are getting paid?
We got we're at $15 tonight. Sneed those super chats, fam.
Yeah, sneed those super chats. Thank you, all of you who have donoed before. But we are gonna have to become spooks if we don't hit our goal. Let's see here. Reliable reporter Bob Woodward was organized crime reporter Sandy Smith of Time magazine. One criticism of Smith would eventually be leveled was that he was too close to the FBI. He would later be identified as one of the reporters who regularly received COINTELPRO leaks. So yeah, literally just publishing lies, right? Many of them, not all of them, obviously. Some of them are true information, released in precisely the right moment and style to not necessarily cause the correct response.
If any of y'all are listening, I have enough of a reputation for publishing truth that I can start laundering your bullshit for the low rate of $7,000 a post.
Yes. All of a sudden, Sandbatch becomes pro-Israel. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. At Time and Time Inc. was owned by Claire Luce Booth, the widow of founder Henry Luce, both of whom were CIA assets. During the Cuba project, both Time and Life magazines provided extensive coverage of the private commando raids staged by the extremist paramilitaries Alpha 66 and Commandos L.
If you'll remember, Alpha 66 was that incredibly based extended program that is virtually responsible for all of South Florida's economy.
Right. Jam Wave, yeah. Let's see. Footnote there. Through his private endorsement of these renegade groups, Luce, the great editorial innovator, invented a new form of journalism for which he is yet to be credited. Paramilitary journalism. Sick. In an interesting anecdote about Claire, Fonzie relates that Luce hadn't thought about her boat crew of sponsored anti-Castro terrorists until the day that President Kennedy was killed. Oof. The more that I explore the COINTELPRO dimensions of Phelps' career, the more convinced I become that Deep Throat was a singularly spectacular persona within a much wider network of parapolitical affiliations centered around the Houston Plan. Footnote, Holland provides ample grounds for more advanced parapolitical speculations about Deep Throat than he himself offers in his main narrative, although most of this is assigned to the endnotes of Leak. Okay. Rather than simple careerism, Felt was acting to subvert Nixon appointee Gray as one part of a much larger deep event. What really mattered to the FBI was that Gray was loyal to Nixon personally and might even put the president's interests and desires above the bureau's. Given that Gray's only Washington experience was in the Department of Justice, his appointment suggested that Nixon was going to at least try to assert greater control over the bureau via his political appointees in the Justice Department. Does it sound familiar to anyone else?
I mean, it's the question is how close to that narrative is what's happening right now actually happening, or how much of this is being narrative fitted by MK Ultra pre-programming running the Watergate script on us again?
Is Cash App Patel truly incompetent, or is he merely being subverted by elements of the dual state, or is it both? It's both. Footnote here, the same had long been suspected about JFK and his appointment of his brother RFK as Attorney General. Yeah,
I mean, long suspected. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Literal. I mean, oh,
literal.
Really?
Yeah. Nepotism. Nepotism. You think it was about loyalty? Yeah, of course it was about loyalty.
I mean, the take home message here is that, I mean, this is the thing that I've been banging the bell about this for at least 4 years that I can think of, which is that the apparatus of the exec, because all of this, notice Congress does not play a role in this at all.
No,
all of this is and the executive. This is the executive branch, which nominally is under the control of one person, but in reality has become so labyrinthine and is actually devolved. A lot of these are special commissions that are congressional authorities that have been devolved to special missions that are kicked out to the executive branch. That this stuff has become so fucking unmanageable that you have to appoint your brother. You have to appoint there's someone
who
happening.
Is unquestionably loyal to you. Not just brothers, but Eskimo brothers.
Yeah, well, in some cases, both.
Yeah. But in an even deeper sense, there may have been an overriding impulse to prevent disclosure of the full extent of COINTELPRO programs. Most disturbing is the case of Arthur Bremer, the unsuccessful lone gunman, of the assassination attempt against Governor George Wallace of Alabama, who, although clearly acting alone, appears to betray some signs of counterintelligence manipulation.
Hold on.
Yeah. Holding on.
Lone gunman. Now here
Yeah.
we get Eric Wilson unironically presenting the lone gunman thesis with respect to Bremer.
About
And-
Arthur. Yeah.
And then in the next clause provides evidence that it was not a lone gunman.
Yeah, I mean, the question, like the idea of, was he subjected to a nudge unit? Was he actually materially aided and abetted? Like, does the fact that only one person had a gun make it a lone gunman thing? Because that
Right.
doesn't really, like,
Right. I'm just saying, Eric, I'm watching you.
Yeah, exactly.
I see you.
He wanted George Wallace to get murdered.
Yeah, you're going after my boy now.
Who, although clearly acting alone, appears to betray some signs of counterintelligence manipulation. According to Holland, Nixon wanted to depict Bremer as a pro-McGovern radical, even though he was generally apolitical and basically a nihilist. The president discussed with Charles Colson the possibility of planting left-wing tracks in Bremer's apartment, and Colson was in frequent contact with Mark Felt the night of the attempted assassination, May 15th, 1972. The Associated Press, interestingly, distributed a story that evening, citing a source close to the investigation, that alleged scraps of paper in Bremer's apartment showed he aligned himself with left-wing causes. So he's saying that all of that was a plan. Okay. Footnote here, I discussed the issue of Bremer in more detail below in this chapter, okay, and chapter 5, so the wrap up. An obvious question to ask at this stage is, given the intensely pluralistic nature of the dual state, could both I see that intensely pluralistic nature of the dual state? Why are you calling it dual? I'm just bothered by the choice of nomenclature.
This is his hobby horse. This is literally he's ostensibly written this entire book to push this hobby horse of the dual state.
Honestly, if he wanted to say dual state, he should be writing dual with an E.
Right. Yeah, that's actually true. He probably should have, and I'm sure he's aware of that. But he's Australian and they pronounce those words differently.
Huh. Could both the CIA and the FBI have been running independent but parallel cover-up operations, phase 2, during Nixon Watergate? The FBI feared that Nixon's penetration of the Bureau would lead to the White House's discovery of deep COINTELPRO operations, rendering senior Bureau members subject to political blackmail, allowing Nixon to exert by other and even more insidious means that unprecedented degree of political control sought through the Houston Plan. Insidious means that the elected president of the United States should be able to direct the actions of the agencies that are part of the executive branch. And the CIA feared the ultimate unraveling of phase 2 of JFK Dallas. Reputedly, Richard Helms was particularly exercised by 5 stories written by New York Times reporter Tad Sizzlk. I don't know how to pronounce that. In late June 1972, whose consistent theme was that the parties culpable for the break-in were the same people responsible for the agency's Bay of Pigs operation in 1961, that is, the CIA officers and anti-Castro Cubans. Hey, the New York Times used to do reporting. That's pretty cool. All right. A striking confirmation of Oglesby's hypothesis of Dealey Plaza and the Watergate as somehow serving as parapolitical doubles. It's kind of funny that one of the things that he put in here was not Bay of Pigs. I mean, like, we talked about Bay of Pigs, but it was just a, sort of a preamble to JFK Dallas, right? Like, It didn't get its own section. Huh.
Which is interesting. The Bay of Pigs is the thing that I've become most interested in as a result of this. I'm now convinced that Bay of Pigs was way more important than I had ever thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, it had a lot of far-reaching consequences. Yeah. Let's see here. Parapolitical symmetries. JFK Dallas and Nixon Watergate. The main enemy is within. Guy Debord. Oh, sorry. Hold on. The main enemy is within. There we go. If I ask the question posed by Oglesby's work, what are the parapolitical symmetries between the Kennedy and Nixon administration? Then my answer must be that they managed to alienate both Yankee and cowboy factions simultaneously. As a result, both administrations fell victim to a silent coup d'etat, Kennedy's by a spectacular assassination, Nixon's by an equally spectacular constitutional crisis, self-consciously stage-managed as a media event. Long footnote here. If my musings are even remotely accurate, then the logic of spectacular power would explain why Nixon was not assassinated. It would have been one public execution too many, following JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the myriad victims of COINTELPRO, such as Fred Hampton. By the same token, however, it was just, guys, we got to dial it back.
One toke over the line.
We got to try something different. We can't just shoot them all.
But I mean, if this is true, that because Nixon got more thoroughly, I mean, again, okay, because remember, this fits with his thesis, okay, because these political assassinations weren't going just real damn well. Okay, you shoot JFK, you turn him into a martyr. You shoot RFK, turn him into a martyr. Shoot MLK, turn him into a martyr. Shoot Malcolm X, turn him into a martyr. You leave Nixon alive, and he's actually a good guy, and he gets turned into the villain of the late 20th century. So leave him again. They start running. Interesting. Okay, Eric. I don't know how I feel about Eric. Again, because I don't like his dual state thesis very much, but I do like his thesis that this occurs because he's managed to alienate both the Cowboys and the Yankees. I do like. It's like I don't know. Eric Wilson. Oh, I want a podcast with Eric Wilson and Nick Land.
Yeah. Let's see here. By the same token, however, it does cast in a new light the still very shadowy affair of Arthur Bremer, a psychotic loner and apparent would-be presidential assassin who was reputedly stalking Nixon in 1972 before being deflected towards Governor George Wallace of Alabama.
Deflected by who?
Yeah, exactly. So he's sort of picking apart his own thing, like they were preparing a patsy, maybe. Deflected towards Governor George Wallace. Most striking is that Colson personally ordered none other than E. Howard Hunt to burglarize Bremer's apartment after the Wallace shooting. According to the two Washington Post reporters, an anonymous attorney informed them that Hunt said Colson wanted him to fly to Milwaukee immediately and break into Arthur Bremer's apartment and bring back anything that might help in connecting Bremer to left-wing political causes. Among Hunt's other clandestine accomplishments during the Nixon years was the forging of diplomatic cables that falsely implicated JFK in the sanctioning of the murder of President No Diem of South Vietnam. Yeah.
I wonder if there's any overlap between Bremer and our man.
So why the fuck is why was he so confident in saying that Bremer acted alone? Because it really doesn't seem like he acted alone.
This is where I like Eric Wilson. I call you to the stand. What game are you running here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really sounds like he was
the Wallace thing. The Wallace thing is hard because Wallace is he's a string that doesn't fit in the knot here, and he's sort of dark matter that exists outside of all of the 1972 stuff because he was at the time he was a spoiler on the Democrat side. He was considered, and it's not just really clear how he fits into all of this, but he was one of the only figures that actually captures just how much of a player Wallace was in 72 is Hunter S. Thompson's reporting on him. Hunter S. Thompson devoted quite a bit of Fear and Loathing on the 72 to 70 Trail 72 to covering George Wallace, and makes a lot of like not totally negative commentary about him, you know, but it's nobody ever accurately accounts for what gravitation the whole Wallace thing has on the 72 election. Remember, this is all happening in 73, 74, but the Watergate break-in occurred in 1972, and this is during the 1972 election that this happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Roger Morris's highly suggestive comments regarding JFK Dallas are equally applicable to Nixon Watergate. The means and methods of respective coups are appropriate to the setting. No conspirators steal away to some secret command post. No tanks crouch among the tree-shaded streets behind the Capitol. We are witnessing the classically American genius of the coup d'etat, achieved by folly as well as by cunning, by commercial calculus and public relations, by both the manipulation of institutions and their craven abdication, by cold intention and no little inadvertence, and by perhaps most essential, at no sacrifice of the popular mythology. A distinguishing mark of the American coup is that it should remain concealed from its victims and history even after its successful execution. That's a good one. That is a good one. That's a really good quote. For Kennedy, his unsuccessful attempt to synthesize both through the JFK, LBJ, Massachusetts, Texas coalition led to interminable instability within the executive branch. For Nixon, Kennedy's weird twin, his fervid double crossing of both factions, culminated in the deep triple cross of the clandestine para-government of the Nixon-Kissinger White House. On this second point, Haldeman is quite enlightening on the profoundly alienating effect of both the super cabinet and the Houston plan upon the essential power blocks of Washington. Reorganization is the secret story of Watergate. The reorganization in the winter of 1972, very little known to the American public, eventually spurned into action against Nixon the great power blocks of Washington, mass media, the bureaucracy, the Congress, and the intelligence services. All of them saw danger as the hated Nixon moved more and more to control the executive branch from the White House, as he was constitutionally mandated to do. What they feared was real. Yeah, it sounds extremely close to the present. Does it not? Does it not? It almost seems like an attempt at reforming these institutions is probably foolhardy, right? You can't just put someone powerful and loyal at the top. They're going to be subverted by every random asshole with any level of access, like, you know, the Bob Woodwards of the world, and Mark Feltz. So probably you just need to get rid of them, or somehow figure out how to replace every single level with loyalists if you are trying to run the executive branch of government.
I mean, you have to. Yeah, I actually, my personal take is that it can't be done over the course of one administration.
Probably not.
Yeah.
An imperially covert presidency, it's kind of like it needs to get done in a month, or it won't be able to get done in a decade.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it has to be done so quickly that nobody can even really respond.
Yeah.
Or it has to be done over the course of
when we finally get the full history of what Doge did in like the week after the inauguration, it's going to look like that. It is. It's going to look like that.
Yeah. I mean, whatever it is that they did, it didn't work.
Well, some of it, I mean, we don't know how much did work.
That's
right?
True.
I think some did work. I'm not like a plan truster here. I'm just saying that, you know, they had access to servers in the night, right? before anyone had any before any of the like entrenched people had any awareness of what was happening to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Let's see. An imperially covert presidency demanded a clandestine resistance. The White House was the focal point of an extraordinary degree of clandestine surveillance during the Nixon years, including the possible bugging of Nixon himself by the plumbers. They put it in his teeth. They put it in his jowls. He had tight cheeks before. One might be inclined to dismiss such reports with a shrug because, after all, they cannot be confirmed. But the leitmotif of bugging is so prevalent in the Watergate affair that it would be naive to reject such reports out of hand. Indeed, as Nixon's memoirs make clear, he himself suspected that he was the victim of electronic eavesdropping. Kissinger, too, fretted about ensuring the secrecy of White House communications. In fact, the president's national security advisor was so concerned about the privacy of his communications and the leaks bursting around him that he rejected the usual communications channels available to his office. Rather than relying upon White House, State Department, or CIA channels, Kissinger approached Admiral Thomas Moorer, then Chief of Naval Operations, and requested a medium that neither the CIA nor any other intelligence service could penetrate. Moorer accommodated the request by giving Kissinger access to the super-sensitive SR-1 channel used by the Navy's top-secret spy unit, Task Force 157. Which was responsible for the global monitoring of Soviet nuclear vessels. It seems like we might actually be having trouble with chat. I was not sure if people were just being quiet, but it has broken down a couple times this stream. So sorry about that, folks.
The chat is eliminated. The chat is dead. They're on to us. They're on to us.
Yep. All right. And of course, it was none other than Lieutenant Bob Woodward who was monitoring Kissinger's multifarious back-channel communications. The communiques that Woodward handled while seconded to the CNO included those that were transmitted on the top-secret SR-1 channel assigned to Task Force 157. What is uncertain, however, is whether the channel was being used by Kissinger during the time that Woodward processed its contents, the summer of 1969 until June of 1970. While Kissinger is known to have used the channel to make arrangements for his mid-1971 visit to Peking, it is unclear whether this was the first occasion on which he began to use the channel or indeed just when those arrangements were made. Still, the Nixon administration's first year, coincident with Woodward's tour of duty at the Pentagon, was a critical one in terms of national security, and there were many secrets to which Woodward became privy. Besides Nixon's vision of a rapprochement with the People's Republic of China, efforts were underway to initiate secret negotiations with North Vietnam, and clandestine meetings were being held with the Soviets to prepare the way for SALT talks, and it was hoped détente. Henry Kissinger's plate was full, so was Moorer's, and so on a much lower level was Woodward's. So Woodward, because of course Woodward was able to see 100% of these because he was passing it back and forth. So, God damn it. What a fucking dickhead. Let's see. I'm going to fly ahead here. Oh, whole Bay of Pigs thing. All right. Yeah. We'll probably be stopping around the whole Bay of Pigs thing. So that'll be a good stopping point. We can continue next week on a machine for pigs. Let's see here. What is so frequently overlooked is that both presidents, whatever their external difficulties, were at one in attempting to extract or disembed the executive from the parapolitical networks of the Yankee Cowboy symmetry. Footnote here. Although it may be pushing the similarities with Nixon's plumbers too far, it would appear that JFK had cultivated his own private and parallel unit of informal operatives, the Irish Mafia, whose members included Kenny O'Donnell, Dave Powers, William Walton, Edward Guthman, John Siegenthaler, and Richard Goodwin. Siegenthaler, not an Irish name. Not an Irish name. Yeah. In practical terms, this was manifested through the near total breakdown of the relationship between the White House and the pluralistic and fragmenting networks of intelligence agencies. Another large footnote. Interestingly, the only other U.S. president known to have seriously alienated the CIA, Jimmy Carter, as of the time of writing, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter also appears to have been politically undermined by the agency. Following the 1977 dismissal of more than 800 covert operatives, or cowboys in agency speak, by Carter's select pick as CIA Director Admiral Stansfield Turner, rank-and-file intelligence officers defected to the Reagan-Bush election campaign and covertly undermined Carter's re-election efforts through a series of dirty tricks. CIA personnel not only stole Carter's briefing book before his television debate with Reagan, but they also set up Carter's brother Billy to look like a cheerleader for Libya, planted moles in the National Security Council, and even used the White House Situation Room to spy on Carter's every move and waking thought. Wow. Amazing. You think that, some of these people should like go to prison or something, right? Like, you kind of feel like maybe they should be, I don't know, executed for treason. It would be like well within the law for doing something like spying on the president and influencing elections. I don't know. Seems like that's a threat to our democracy.
It's going to be terrifying whenever we find out that a president in the early, in the late early 20th century offended the CIA and accidentally incurred a series of a series of sabotage campaigns orchestrated by Bob Woodward and the editorial staff at the Washington Post, isn't it?
Oh, wait. Like yeah, exactly. Oh, like a bunch of 50 former intelligence
Like Barack Obama, who they hated because he was black.
Yeah, right. Like when 50 former intelligence people sign off on a memo stating that a completely intelligence operation fabricated dossier says that it has all of the hallmarks of Russian propaganda, which is apparently enough of a weasel phrase to not cause all of the to not have, I don't know, all of them go to prison for I don't know, at least fraud. Even if we're not going to capital crimes. But what do I know? Yeah. Although one can only guess what conversations took place within the clandestine spaces of the Kennedy administration, one would be able to conclude from the direct evidence of the paper trail that a de facto collapse in relations between the presidency and the intelligence services, both civilian and military, had taken place immediately following the failure of Zapata. This is established with exceptional clarity in the two national security memorandums that were both issued on June 28, 1961, designating paramilitary warfare as a central pillar of national defense policy, while simultaneously transferring operational responsibility exclusively to the Pentagon. National Security Action Memorandum number 56. It is important that we anticipate now our possible future requirements in the field of unconventional warfare and paramilitary operations. National Security Action Memorandum number 57. The Department of Defense will normally receive responsibility for overt paramilitary operations. Where such an operation is to be wholly covert or disownable, it may be assigned to the CIA, provided that it is within the normal capabilities of the agency. Any large paramilitary operation, wholly or partly covert, which requires significant numbers of military-trained personnel, amounts of military equipment which exceed normal CIA-controlled stocks, and or military experience of a kind and level peculiar to the armed services, is properly the primary responsibility of the Department of Defense, with the CIA in a supporting role. All right, fair enough. Sounds like Babe Pigs. Aggravating the intelligence establishment even further was the issuance of the Inspector General's survey of the Cuban operation in October 1961, authored by Lyman Kirkpatrick. I was hoping for Lemnitzer again, right? In response to the survey, Deputy Director of the CIA, General Charles Cabell, circulated a secret memo within the agency on the 15th of December, 1961, declaring that the report misses objectivity by a wide margin. In unfriendly hands, JFK or RFK perhaps, it can become a weapon unjustifiably to attack the entire mission, organization, and functioning of the agency. Cabell's response was neither atypical nor exaggerated. According to Colonel Jack Hawkins, the CIA high command of that time seemed to reject the report out of hand, dismissed it as worthless and a threat to the CIA's very existence. The agency's worst fears were subsequently realized through the intensification of JFK's commitment to covert operations, flexible responses, and counterinsurgency as pseudo-compromise, an effort to resolve the Yankee-Cowboy split in a manner that truly satisfied no one and yielded the intolerable outcome of the structural and operational subordination of civilian intelligence to military. JFK had moved to transfer CIA operations to the American military in Vietnam. He was focusing covert military operations on Army Special Forces rather than CIA paramilitary. His 1963 Cuban initiatives were being built around interdepartmental Army and state efforts, placing the CIA operations staff, such as JM Wave, in a supporting rather than a controlling role. All of these moves were a direct blow to CIA operational autonomy and would not have gone unnoticed by individuals in roles such as David Morales at JM Wave.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. As Nixon himself seemed to be aware, Cuba was the parapolitical key to JFK's fate as spectacle, the very one that he tried so desperately to avoid for himself.
Okay. Way to tie it all together there. Actually, Eric. Okay. I'm still not. Yeah. Oh, this is an infuriating book.
Why?
It's because there are things that are there. This is the kind of book that like I would have had a great time in grad school with in seminar because there are things about it that I really like. This is why.
There are
left there.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
This is why lefties piss me off because they're like they frequently land on gold. Like I think this bit about the Houston plan, there's a through line here that I really like, but then I don't know that you need the Debordian spectacle shit to make that argument.
I think you need the Debordian spectacle. I mean, it's sort of the concept elucidates the like overall like public narrative manipulations, right?
Yeah.
Like that's definitely like how you like that's definitely the tie-in here. Because if you didn't have, I mean, certainly with Watergate, if you didn't have the spectacle, then it wouldn't have, it would not have had any effect at all, right? The media manipulation of this event would not have resulted in the resignation of Nixon. If in the example of JFK, a lack of in this explanation, of course, a lack of awareness of that type of effect, like attempting to cause a like dramatic counter response in the public, right, to support a Cuban invasion. If that awareness wasn't present, which of course is the spectacle, then the assassination would not have occurred similarly. And all false flags, right? All false flags are inherently a spectacle, right? So you have the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The application here is essentially like smashing DeBord and Oglesby together and seeing if the explanations complete each other, right? Yeah. And so it appears that they are fairly cohesive, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think that we are going to leave it at the whole Bay of Pigs thing. There's a few pages left in this chapter before we get to the spectacle of conspiracy, but we're definitely not going to be able to
like
cover them.
Prude is like Big Ben says, "Oh, Prude is live. My parasocial relationship with him is stronger than my
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, unlike us, Prude's been doing it for longer, so he's had a longer parasocial relationship. Although he did call me a zip coon because I do love my minstrelsy. So we're all friends here. We're all friends here. Sandbatch, you got anything coming up before we next we meet?
Oh, the book is all typeset and everything like that. I got to get the money to buy the ISBN though, so who knows how fucking long I'm going to be stuck in.
You could just put it with a publisher.
I refuse.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Because the reason, and the real honest to God reason I'm not going through a publisher.
Pride.
No, because if I go through a publisher, I get paid about 30 cents a copy sold, and if I do it myself, I get paid about $6 a copy sold, and I need the money.
Yeah, what matters.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, let's see. We don't have anything super important coming up. I am going to be on Last Picture Show. Last Film Festival, the third Last Film Festival he is doing. So go ahead and save the date. He'll be releasing everything, I think, in the first week of December. So start looking out for that. We're going to do Brain Damage. So I have done a deep dive into Frank Henenlotter's work. And, on an upcoming episode of the Book Club from Hell, I have read L.A. Vought's monumental work on physiognomy and determining the qualities of another person by the shape of their head.
Oh, man. Oh, I did the Last Thing. I already recorded mine with Last Things. I did.
Oh, what one are you doing? Or what one did you do?
Did Brian De Palma's 1976 New Orleans noir thriller Obsession.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's actually it's sort of interesting because he was a little surprised, I think, by my choice, and because I didn't want to do any more David Lynch. I'm not sick of David Lynch, but I've talked about David Lynch too much. And Obsession, it's probably the best movie ever made about New Orleans. It's one of the most Catholic movies ever made, and it is an early Brian De Palma, and I think it's Paul Schrader's first screenplay.
Oh,
so
cool.
it's a really cool movie.
I'm glad to have been one of the two fellows who popped your Lynch cherry.
Yeah.
Live for the people. A recording of you watching David Lynch for the first time.
As he was breathing his last.
Yeah. As he was just like, finally, Sandbatch saw Blue Velvet. And he died. Yeah. His death rattle came out just as you were saying, that was a great fucking movie. Yeah. His soul was carried to the heavens.
If I remember correctly, I said it was an
animatronic bird.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I thought it was a good movie, but I wasn't totally blown away until I saw Lost Highway, and that was the one that really just.
Yeah, I mean, you immediately went and started watching more David Lynch.
Right? Yeah. You all lit the fuse. Blue Velvet was the fuse, and it exploded on Lost Highway. Yeah,
that's why Blue Velvet is the first Lynch movie people should watch.
Yeah,
if you haven't seen David Lynch, go watch Blue Velvet because it's a coherent story that has all of the Lynch weirdness.
Yeah,
and then you can get into the ones that are slightly less coherent. Yeah.
And then finally, one day, when you're thoroughly synesthetic and no longer understand time any longer, you'll be ready for the masterpiece, Mulholland Drive.
Yep. All right. Well, we are going to leave you there, folks. And until next time, remember, if they ever used to work for the CIA, they work for the CIA even more now.
You're discouraged from questioning and thinking critically. You must accept the word of the leaders. They make you feel guilty if you do question or argue. Your environment is often controlled, cutting you off from friends, family, school, previously held beliefs. They want you to become dependent, provide a poor diet, poor health care, little sleep, and long exhausting hours of work to make you physically weak and lower your ability to think clearly. Subtly, your self-confidence gets undermined, and your self-image or sense of identity is changed. The leaders control channels of communication. They cut off or put down outside sources of information. Then they bombard you with what they want you to think. They use strong peer pressure, playing on your desire to be loved and accepted. The leaders may promise rewards if you obey them and punishment if you don't, but they alternate harshness and leniency in order to confuse you. The leaders manipulate language, giving special meanings to words that only insiders understand. This is to make you feel like you're part of a special, important, or elite group, and that outsiders are inferior, dangerous, or doomed. You have to confess your shortcomings, mistakes, or misbehavior, sometimes even if these things never really happened. And meanwhile, your time and activities are tightly controlled. You don't have much privacy or energy or time to think because you're too busy doing monotonous, repetitive tasks. The leaders try to control you and even your sexuality, everything about you. They want to exploit you for their own enrichment, their own power or grandiosity. If they succeed, you will declare your loyalty to its leaders, rejecting your old values and way of life. Without realizing it, you will have been changed into a person who is being controlled by a totalist cult.